Ren's Journey Season 3, Chapter 101, The Shadow on the Board. Date, August 12th, 1989. Location, High-Level Briefing Room 4B, Hunter Association HQ. The hum of the fluorescent lights in Briefing Room 4B was the only sound breaking the silence. Outside the floor-to-ceiling glass, the skyline of York New City buzzed with late-afternoon traffic, but inside the air was cold enough to see your breath. On the central mahogany table lay a thick, leather-bound dossier stamped with Chairman Netero's personal stamp. Cale stood near the glass, his silver cane resting against his hip as he stared down at the streets below. At 16, I sat back in one of the heavy leather chairs, twirling a pen between my fingers. My golden-green aura was completely concealed under a flawless layer of yin, but the sheer density of my spirit sat inside me like a coiled spring. "Read it," Cale said softly without turning around. "You aren't going to like it." I leaned forward and flipped open the dossier. The file, Whispers in the Bureaucracy. Hunter Association Internal Audit. Target, Blacklist Hunter Operations, East Gorto Division. Directive, Unauthorized S-Rank Bounty Execution. Primary leaf, Political Factioning within the Association Committee. Subject, The Phantom Troop, Jinai Ryodan. Movement, 1989. I scanned the documents, my eyes narrowing as I read through the field reports. "While we were on Greed Island for 9 months," I murmured, my finger tracing the encrypted logs, "the political rats in the association weren't sitting idle. Certain committee members have been leaking association intel on rogue Nen users directly into the underworld." "Not just any rogue Nen users," Cale corrected, turning back with a sharp, serious look in his dark eyes. "They've been dangling high-priority targets in front of Krollo Lucifer. High-ranking bureaucrats are using the Phantom Troop as an unofficial cleaning service to sweep away opposition, all while lobbying the chairman for more legislative budget." Using the troop as a cleaning service. I let out a low, cold laugh, tossing the pen onto the table. "Krollo isn't the type to be played as a pawn, Cale. If he's taking the bait, it's because he's getting something far more valuable in return." "Like stolen Hatsu abilities," Cale added grimly. The executive bureaucrat, click. The heavy oak door to the briefing room swung open without a knock. My eyes snapped to the doorway. Before my conscious mind could even react, the autonomous defense protocol of Soul Vanguard pulsed subtly beneath my skin. The residual instinct of Thomas warning me of a presence entering the room. Walking through the doorway was Director Bushidora, a senior executive officer from the association's disciplinary committee, accompanied by 2 armed association liaisons. His face was set in a rigid, cold line, holding an official briefing tablet. "Ren." "Cale," Director Bushidora said sternly, stepping into the room. "I see you finally returned from your extended leave on Greed Island. Chairman Netero informed us your aura channels have recovered." Bushidora's eyes drifted toward me, trying to catch a sliver of my hidden aura. I didn't flinch. I sat back in my chair, resting my ankles on the corner of the mahogany table, looking at him with a calm, lazy expression. "Director," I said smoothly, my tone laced with just enough dry warmth to make him pause. "You seem surprised that I'm back on my feet. Did someone on your committee claim my specialist nodes were permanently broken?" Bushidora's jaw tightened slightly, but he smoothed out his coat and set an official task order onto the table. "Personal matters aside, the association has an immediate situation that requires hunters with your specific history with Krollo Lucifer," Bushidora stated coldly. "We take directives from Chairman Netero," interrupted, his voice dropping an octave as he tapped his silver cane against the floor. "Not the disciplinary board." "The chairman authorized this mission personally," Bushidora replied, pointing to the seal on the document. "The mission, the trade route." "A convoy carrying black market archaeological relics from the southern continent is passing through the border of the Kakin Empire next week," Bushidora explained. "Our informants confirm that the Phantom Troops Phaeton and Finks have already marked the transport. The committee is dispatching a task force to secure the relics before they fall into spider hands." I picked up the document, feeling the weight of the official seal between my fingers. Whether this came from corrupt committee members setting a trap or a genuine association order didn't matter. Either way, the troop was moving. I looked up at Bushidora, a slow, confident grin spreading across my face as my golden green aura flickered once under my skin. deep, heavy, and completely unbothered. Phaeton and Finks in the Kaken Empire next week? I said, slipping the assignment paper into my coat pocket next to Ging's architect's key. Sounds like a great place to test out my new sweeping tool. Bushidora raised an eyebrow, confused by the mention of a sweeping tool, before offering a stiff nod. Report to the transport deck tomorrow morning at 8. Chapter 101, Summary and Status. Date, Location, August 12th, 1989, Briefing Room 4B, Hunter Association HQ. Correction. Periston removed, not vice chairman until 1997. Intel. Association bureaucrats are manipulating troop movements. Mission assigned, intercept Phaeton and Finks at the Kaken Empire border. Chapter 102, The Web of Silk and Gold. Date, August 14th, 1989. Location, Underground Vault, Hunter Association HQ Kaken border trade route. Before boarding the transport airship for the Kaken Empire, Kale and I had a 4-hour window. We didn't waste a single minute. Director Bushidora isn't corrupt, Kale noted as we walked through the lower archives of HQ, his silver cane clicking softly on the polished stone floor. He's rigid and obsessed with procedure, but the clerk who authorized the route details on Bushidora's tablet? That's where the leak is. Beacon of the Unwavering, I murmured. Flash. A tiny, invisible star of emitted aura detached from my fingertip, floating silently through the ventilation ducts toward the administrative records office. Using the tactical perception of my Hatsu, my mind mapped out the building's floor plan in real time. Within minutes, my aura locked onto an executive liaison, hastily burning duplicate shipping manifests in a basement incinerator room, a man named Vane taking kickbacks from an illegal antiquities syndicate tied to the troop. I didn't give him the chance to scream. Using thread of unbroken will, a single golden ribbon sliced through the lock, pulled the door open, and wrapped around Vane's throat before he could touch his radio. 5 minutes of quiet interrogation yielded everything. Vane had leaked the convoy's exact route to Phaeton and Finks in exchange for a 15% cut of the black market auction sales. The disciplinary board will handle Vane, Kale said, binding the clerk in non-suppression cuffs. Now, about the relic. The objective, the sun-draped vessel. The convoy wasn't carrying random golden trinkets. The central relic was the sun-draped vessel, a pre-industrial ceremonial chalice forged from rare star iron, capable of naturally storing and amplifying emitted nen without decaying over centuries. To a specialist or an emitter, it was a priceless artifact. To the association, securing it meant an S-rank retrieval bounty. A rare double-star merit mark and a choice of 500 million Jenny, or direct access to the association's restricted vaults. August 18th, 1989, the Desert Canyon Kaken border. The heavy armored transport truck rumbled along the dusty canyon trail, surrounded by 4 escort Humvees. Inside the primary transport bay, Kale and I sat across from the reinforced vault holding the sun-draped vessel. Screech! Boom! Without warning, the lead Humvee exploded into a roaring fireball. A massive, dense sphere of pure enhancement aura, a thrown boulder wrapped in lethal shoe, had pulverized the vehicle like aluminum can. The convoy slammed to a halt, kicking up clouds of yellow dust. They're here, Kale said calmly, unfastening his seatbelt. Through the settling dust outside, 2 figures stepped onto the canyon road. On the left stood Finks, casually rolling his right shoulder in his tracksuit, a ruthless smirk plastered across his face. On the right stood Phaeton, draped in his dark, high-collared skull mantle, his cold eyes narrowed as he gripped the handle of his umbrella. "Ch!" Phaeton muttered, his voice raspy and sharp. "Escorts are already dead. Break the truck, Finks." "Hold on, Faye," Finks grunted, stopping in his tracks as his eyes locked onto the back doors of the armored transport. "Look who's stepping out." The clashing currents. The heavy rear doors swung open. I stepped out onto the hot canyon gravel, hands tucked lazily into my coat pockets, my golden-green specialist aura rising around me in a serene, perfectly balanced hum. Beside me, Kale leaned on his silver cane, his posture completely relaxed. Phaeton's eyes widened slightly, a sudden, lethal spike of hostility erupting from his frame. The kid from Meteor City, the one Krollo took from. "Well, well," Finks grinned, his aura flaring as he began rotating his arm in wide, deliberate circles. "I thought you were a broken hollow after the boss stole your Hatsu, kid. What's with that monster aura?" "I got better," I said smoothly, taking a step forward. Clang! With a heavy metallic ring, the broom of the Wrath Angel materialized in my right hand, its dense metallic fibers shimmering under the scorching desert sun as a massive flood of raw enhancement aura wrapped around the barrel. Finks stopped rotating his arm, his smirk vanishing into a hard, focused scowl as he felt the sheer kinetic pressure radiating off the broom. A broom? Phaeton hissed, his hand tightening on his umbrella blade. You mock us, brat? Not at all, I smiled, dropping into a wide, grounded stance. I'm just here to clean up the canyon. Chapter 102 Summary and Status Date Location, August 18, 1989. Desert Canyon, Kakin Empire border. Investigation. Corrupt liaison Vane exposed and captured at HQ. The Relic, sun-draped vessel, star iron aura amplifying chalice. Reward on risk, 500 Memengeni, access to Association's restricted vaults. Current conflict, Ren and Kale versus Phaeton and Finks. Chapter 103, The Torque of a Tempest. Date, August 18, 1989. Location, Desert Canyon, Kakin Empire border. The dry desert heat felt suffocating, but the air pressure around Finks was spiked with something far more volatile. 1, 2, 3. Finks began rotating his right shoulder in wide, rhythmic circles. With every single rotation, his aura didn't just expand, it multiplied exponentially. The pebbles at his feet began to float off the cracked canyon asphalt, shattered into fine powder by the violent centrifugal force of his Hatsu. Ripper cyclotron. Let's see if that fancy broom can hold together after 10 rotations, kid! Finks roared, his eyes wide with wild, competitive glee as his right arm swelled with a dense, blinding coat of Ko. 4, 5, 6, 7. Beside him, Phaeton flicked open his red umbrella with a sharp snap, taking a low stance as his dark eyes tracked Kale. Don't kill him in one hit, Finks. We need to know who leaked the route. Kale, handle Phaeton, I said softly, my voice dropping into a calm, rhythmic focus. Keep him away from the transport. Don't take too long, Ren, Kale replied, tapping his silver cane against the road. In a flash of silver motion, Kale glided backward, drawing Phaeton's attention away toward the edge of the rocky ridge. The clash, Ripper Cyclotron versus the Great Sweep, 8, 9, 10. 10 rotations, Finks shouted, the air around his right fist detonating like a localized shockwave. He lunged forward, closing a 20-meter gap in less than a second, leaving 2 deep trenches carved into the desert floor. His fist rocketed straight toward my chest with enough destructive force to blow through a battleship hull. I didn't try to dodge. I didn't even raise a defensive Ryu shield to block it directly. Instead, I took half a step backward with my left pivot foot rooting my weight into the earth. The metallic bristles of the broom of the Wrath Angel flared with a brilliant golden-green light as I channeled Soul Vanguard through the shaft, turning the entire broom into an absolute vector axis. Technique. The Great Sweep. A specialized counter-redirection technique. Instead of matching raw power head-on, the broom catches the incoming momentum using specialized emission threads and uses a rotational arc to redirect 100% of the opponent's kinetic force back into their own balance point. Boom! Finks' punch made contact, not with my body, but with the angled, fluid sweep of the broom handle. The moment his Ripper Cyclotron struck the bristles, the dense shoe wrapped around the broom acted like a curved rail. Rather than absorbing the blast, I twisted my hips and swept the broom in a massive circular arc, riding the kinetic energy of his 10-rotation punch. What? Finks' eyes widened in sheer disbelief as his entire body was dragged forward by his own unstoppable momentum. The sheer force of his punch was forcefully redirected downward into the canyon floor right beneath his feet. Crack boom! The desert road shattered into a 30-foot crater. Dust, asphalt, and pulverized rock exploded skyward like a geyser. But before Finks could recover his footing or reset his center of gravity, I completed the second half of the Great Sweep's arc. Bringing the heavy base of the broom back around with the added momentum of his own punch, I slammed the metallic head straight into Finks's exposed ribs. Whack! Finks was sent skimming across the desert plain like a skipped stone, tumbling through 3 solid boulders before crashing into the canyon wall in a cloud of yellow dust. The aftermath and the vault. Secured silence fell over the canyon road, broken only by the settling dust and the crackle of burning gravel. I stood in the center of the road, breathing steadily, resting the broom of the Wrath Angel against my shoulder. The golden-green aura surrounding the bristles hummed in perfect equilibrium, not a single hair out of place. From the top of the ridge, Phaeton paused, his umbrella blade half drawn, staring down at the settling crater where Finks had hit the cliff face. He redirected 10 rotations? Phaeton muttered, his voice dropping into a deadly, ice-cold register. Out of the rubble, Finks pushed himself up, coughing up a spatter of dust, clutching his bruised side with a mixture of shock and a dark, booming laugh. "Damn it, kid!" Finks barked, wiping his mouth as he staggered out of the rock pile. "That wasn't just enhancement. You used the rotation of my own arm against me." "I told you," I grinned, shifting my weight into a ready stance as Kale stepped up beside me. "I came here to clean up." Chapter 104, The Flash of the Concealed Steel, date August 18th, 1989, location Desert Canyon, Kakin Empire border. The dust from Fink's crash hadn't even fully settled before the air temperature in the canyon dropped several degrees. Phaeton stepped down from the rocky ridge, his movements completely soundless. The cloth mask pulled over his lower face rustled softly in the desert wind, leaving only his cold, slitted eyes visible. "Enough playing, Finks," Phaeton said, his voice dropping into a low metallic rasp. "You talk too much. Get back or I carve him." Finks spat a mouthful of red dirt, dusting off his track jacket as he leaned against a boulder, grinning grimly. "Be careful, Phi. That brat's spatial timing is absurd now." Phaeton didn't answer. He adjusted his grip on his red umbrella, his posture shifting into a razor-thin stance. Shing! With a quiet, lethal ring, the handle of the umbrella detached, sliding free to reveal a thin, deadly, concealed sword forged from darkened steel. The umbrella canopy remained in his left hand as an offhand shield, while his right hand held the sword at a low, stabbing angle. The lightning strike shh! Without a single word of warning, Phaeton vanished. Not figuratively. His movement speed was so extreme that he blurred into 3 distinct visual afterimages across the cracked asphalt. Before my conscious eyes could track his trajectory, the tip of his rapier-like blade was already an inch away from my left carotid artery, screaming through the air with concentrated "Ko!" Clang! A golden-green spark exploded between us. Before the steel could touch my skin, the defensive construct of Soul Vanguard shifted autonomously. Its heavy aura-forged heater shield materialized on my left flank, catching Phaeton's lethal thrust right on the central crest. The shockwave knocked loose gravel into the air, but Phaeton didn't pause for a fraction of a millisecond. Tap, 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 tap! Using the recoil against the shield, Phaeton bounced backward, spun his body midair, and executed a flurry of 7 consecutive stabs toward my throat, heart, and knees. Every strike was executed with terrifying precision, the blade moving so fast it looked like a wall of silver needles. "Aegis of the Faithful," I called out. My golden-green aura flared, dynamically hardening across my skin. The steel blade bit into the dense layer of shoe, leaving shallow scratches across my coat sleeve but failing to pierce through to my flesh. "Fast," I muttered, stepping back as Phaeton's umbrella canopy opened in my face, blocking my vision for a split second. Click. From behind the umbrella's edge, the concealed tip of a spring-loaded blade shot from the top of the umbrella shaft straight toward my forehead, countering the phantom shadow. A cheap trick wrapped in absolute assassin speed. Instead of ducking, I activated Thread of Unbroken Will. Swish! A dozen golden aura ribbons exploded from my fingertips. 3 of the steel-hardened threads tangled around the concealed spring blade, snapping the mechanism mid-flight. 5 elastic threads latched onto the surrounding canyon walls, while the remaining threads wrapped around the handle of the broom of the Wrath Angel. With an explosive flex of my core, I used the elastic tension to pull myself sideways while swinging the heavy metallic broom overhead in a crushing arc. Technique: downward crush, dust strike. Concentrates the dual post-mortem engine's entire enhancement reservoir into the broom's tip, executing an overhead hammer slam designed to crush high-level Ken defenses. Boom! I slammed the broom straight down where Phaeton stood. Phaeton's eyes widened as he felt the sheer, mountain-shattering weight descending on him. Realizing he couldn't block the strike with his thin rapier or umbrella canopy, he used his incredible agility to perform an impossible mid-air contortion, leaping backward just as the broom struck the earth. Crack thunder! The ground beneath us split open. A 10-foot deep trench ripped through the canyon floor, sending a massive shockwave of displaced stone and air pressure hurtling toward the canyon walls. Phaeton landed 40 feet away, skidding on his boots. His coat was shredded at the hem from the sheer kinetic wind, and a thin line of red dripped from a tiny graze on his cheek. A standoff of monsters. The canyon fell dead silent. Phaeton wiped the drop of blood from his cheek with the back of his gloved hand, staring at the red smear on his fingers with quiet, terrifying intensity. His aura began to shift. Dark, burning, and toxic, the early sign of his sinister Hatsu beginning to warm up under his anger. "He grazed you, Faye," Finks noted from the sidelines, his eyes serious now. "You want to pull out Painpacker out here in the open?" "Shut up," Phaeton hissed, his eyes locked onto me like an enraged viper. I rested the heavy metallic broom on my shoulder, my golden-green specialist aura swirling around me in a serene, unshakable sphere. Beside me, Kale stepped up, his silver cane humming with readiness, while my 2 Soul Vanguard Knights stood guard at my flanks. "We can keep going, Phaeton," I said calmly, my voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Or you can tell Crollo that the boy whose nen he stole is waiting for him in York New City." Chapter 104 Summary and Status. Date, location, August 18th, 1989, Desert Canyon, Kakin border. Combat action. Phaeton attacks with hidden umbrella sword at extreme speed. Ren's defense. Soul Vanguard blocks initial thrust. Aegis thickens to stop flurries. Counter technique. Ren executes downward crush, shattering the ground and grazing Phaeton. Current status. Phaeton injured and enraged. Ren stands fully unharmed and confident. The toxic, burning pressure of Phaeton's rising nen suddenly froze in place. Finks stepped between us, slapping a heavy hand onto Phaeton's shoulder before the dark heat of Painpacker could fully ignite. "Drop it, Phi," Finks grunted, his voice dropping into a rare, deadly serious tone. "Look around us. The truck's reinforced vault is intact, the kid's got 2 autonomous guardians blocking the choke points, and his spatial threads are already anchored across the entire cliffside. You pull out Painpacker out here, and all we do is blow up the relic we came to steal and waste our time." Phaeton glared at Finks for 3 long, agonizing seconds, his slitted eyes burning with raw venom. Slowly, with a sharp click, he slid his thin steel blade back into the shaft of his umbrella. "You got lucky, brat," Phaeton spat, pulling his skull mask higher over his nose. "Next time, no talk." "I'll be waiting," I replied calmly. Without another word, Phaeton flicked his cloak around his shoulders and vanished up the cliffside in a blur of speed. Finks lingered for a second, giving me a toothy, dangerous grin. "Not bad, kid," Finks chuckled, dusting off his jacket as he turned toward the ridge. "Tell whoever sold us this route inside your association that his info was garbage. We're done here." With a powerful leap, Finks cleared the canyon wall, leaving only the settling desert dust behind. Securing the sun-draped vessel, Kale let out a slow, measured breath, easing his weight back onto his silver cane as the suffocating pressure of the troop's aura finally dissolved into the afternoon heat. "They're gone," Kale confirmed, his perception sweeping the ridge for 3 miles in every direction. "Clean retreat." "Good," I said, letting the broom of the Wrath Angel disperse into soft, glowing particles of green light. My 2 Soul Vanguard constructs faded into my aura, returning to the silent reservoir of my post-mortem engine. I walked over to the back of the armored transport truck. The heavy steel doors had been warped by the initial shockwave, but the central stasis vault inside was completely untouched. Placing my palm against the vault door, I used a gentle pulse of emission to unlock the reinforced mechanism. The heavy door hissed open, revealing a velvet-lined chamber. Resting inside was the sun-draped vessel, a magnificent ceremonial chalice forged from dark, iridescent star iron. The moment my hand hovered over it, the chalice softly resonated with my golden-green aura, naturally amplifying and stabilizing the ambient energy in the room. "It really is star iron," I murmured, carefully lifting the heavy artifact and placing it into a specialized protective case. An aura amplifier of this caliber is priceless. Return to HQ. The S-rank reward date, August 22nd, 1989. Location, Executive Council Chamber, Hunter Association HQ. 4 days later, Kale and I stood before the disciplinary committee in the high-ceilinged council hall of Association HQ. Director Bushidora sat at the head of the mahogany desk, examining the pristine, undamaged, sun-draped vessel resting on the velvet pedestal before him. Standing beside him, locked in heavy nen-suppression cuffs, was the clerk Vane, his face pale as ash as the full record of his illegal dealings with the troop sat documented on the table. The convoy escort suffered minor casualties, but the primary target was secured without a single scratch, Bushidora announced, his voice echoing off the marble walls with rigid authority. Furthermore, your field investigation led directly to the apprehension of a treasonous element within our own administrative board. Bushidora pressed official stamp onto our mission completion file. S-rank mission completion. Convoy defense. Objective, secure the sun-draped vessel and neutralize rogue intel. Status, flawless success, rewards granted. 1. Double-star merit record update for Ren and Kale. 2. 500,000 Jenny bounty transfer. 3. Restricted vault clearance, level 4 authorization. Your performance was exemplary, Ren, Bushidora said, offering a rare, formal bow from behind his desk. The association owes you a great debt. Just doing my job, Director, I replied, a calm, quiet grin settling on my face as I slipped the level 4 clearance card into my coat pocket. We walked out of the council chamber into the bright, sunlit concourse of HQ. At 16 years old, carrying 500 million Jenny, high-level vault clearance, and an unshakable master-level Hatsu, the path ahead was wide open. So, Kale asked, tapping his cane against the marble floor with a smirk, what's our next move, Wayfarer? First, we pocket the bounty, I chuckled, looking out the massive glass window toward the skyline. Then, we start preparing for York New City. Chapter 105, The Ink on the Newsprint. Date September 14, 1989. Location, Private Suite, Hunter Association, HQ. The morning sun filtered through the high glass windows of my suite, casting long, golden geometric shapes across the hardwood floor. I sat at the wooden breakfast table, sipping a black tea while scrolling through a fresh stack of international newspapers Kale had brought up from the lobby. I was flipping through the national crime section of the Yorbian Times when my hand froze mid-page. My eyes locked onto a small, easily overlooked column tucked away on page 12. Yorbian Times. Crime and Courts Brief. Headline. Spokane tramp arrested in downtown homicide. Details. A nameless vagrant was taken into custody last night following the brutal murder of a prominent local shopkeeper. Legal status. The suspect possesses no birth certificate, citizenship papers, or official identification. Authorities report the individual originated from the unmapped landfill zone known as Meteor City. Prosecution. Local magistrate fast-tracking conviction despite lack of physical evidence, citing high flight risk and illegal vagrancy status. A cold, heavy drop of lead seemed to settle in the pit of my stomach. I stared at the black and white photo of the accused man, a frail, dirt-caked vagrant in his late 50s, his eyes wide with terrified, mute confusion as two heavily armed officers shoved him into the back of a police van. No official records. Mistreated by the outside world's legal system. Wrongfully convicted. My mind raced through the vast, unspoken knowledge of my past life, my memories of the original timeline. I knew this story. I knew exactly where this lead. In 1993, 4 years from now, it would be proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that this man was completely innocent. The real murderer would be caught elsewhere. But by then, it would be far too late. The tramp would die in a cold, forgotten prison cell, stripped of all human dignity, simply because he came from a place that officially didn't exist. And in response to his death, 30 members of the Meteor City community would turn themselves into living human bombs. They would walk into the courtrooms, police stations, and government halls of the city that framed him, detonating themselves in synchronized suicide strikes. They left a single message on the scorched walls of the city. We accept anything, leave nothing behind. So take nothing from us. That singular wrongful arrest was the exact catalyst that forged Meteor City's terrifying, absolute pact of bloody retaliation with the outside world. The weight of precognition, Kale's voice broke through my trance. He was standing near the kitchenette, setting down his silver cane as he watched my expression turn deathly quiet. What is it? I didn't answer immediately. I laid the newspaper flat on the mahogany table and smoothed out the wrinkles with my palm. Look at this, I said quietly, pointing to the column. Cale walked over, leaning down to scan the brief report. As his eyes reached the words Meteor City, his relaxed posture instantly vanished, replaced by a sharp, guarded stillness. A homeless man from the garbage heap. Cale read aloud, his voice dropping an octave. They're framing him because he has no papers. No family to sue, no legal defense to call, no citizenship to protect him. He's an easy case to close for a local prosecutor looking for a quick conviction. He didn't do it, Cale, I said firmly, looking up into his eyes. Cale raised an eyebrow. How can you be so sure? We aren't in Spokane. Because I know, I replied, the absolute conviction in my voice leaving zero room for argument. If this conviction goes through, if this man dies in their prison, the retribution Meteor City sends back 4 years from now will drown that city in blood. Dozens of innocent people will die, and Meteor City will seal its heart away from the world forever. Cale stared at me, sensing the unshakable weight behind my words. He didn't ask how I knew. He had learned long ago to trust my instincts without question. So what are you going to do? Cale asked, resting his hand on the head of his silver cane. We just secured 500 million Jenny and level 4 vault access. We have the resources, the mobility, and the authority of hunter licenses. I stood up from the table, my golden green aura flaring softly under my skin, not in anger, but with the calm, steady heat of the sacred wayfarer. We aren't letting an innocent man rot, and we aren't letting that fuse get lit, I said, slipping my coat over my shoulders. We're going to Spokane. We're going to buy him the best legal defense money can buy, find the real killer ourselves, and show the world that Meteor City isn't a dumpster you can throw trash into. Chapter 105, Summary and Status. Date, Location, September 14th, 1989, Hunter HQ, Spokane Region. Intel discovered. News report details wrongful arrest of a Meteor City tramp. Timeline. Truth. Ren knows this event triggers the 1993 suicide bomb retaliation. Current decision. Ren and Cale mobilized to intervene legally and investigation-wise. Chapter 106. The Unseen Witnesses. Date, September 18th, 1989. Location, downtown Spokane, Yorbia Republic. Rain slicked the narrow cobblestone alleyway behind the upscale jewelry shop on 4th Avenue. The yellow police tape flapped lazily in the damp night wind, guarding the damp brick walls where, 5 days ago, a local shopkeeper had been beaten to death with a heavy iron pipe. The local police had called it an open and shut case. A homeless man from Meteor City was found sleeping 3 blocks away with bloodstains on his torn coat, blood that the local coroner hadn't even bothered to properly test before closing the file. Cale and I stepped into the shadows of the alley, our umbrellas keeping the rain off our coats. The crime scene's been cleared for 4 days, Cale observed, his silver cane tapping against the wet pavement. The rain has washed away any physical tracks, and the local precinct isn't letting anyone near the evidence locker without a court order. Physical evidence isn't what I'm looking for, I replied, stepping toward the center of the alley where the murder took place. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath of the cold night air. My specialist spirit aligned seamlessly with my aura channels, bringing the sacred wayfarer into focus. Beacon of the Unwavering, I whispered. Flash, a tiny, brilliant orb of golden green aura detached from my fingertip, floating upward into the dark canopy of the alley. As it reached 10 feet above our heads, the light didn't just illuminate the brickwork. It burst into a soft, pulse-like wave of emitted nen that swept across the entire alleyway. Technique. Beacon of the Unwavering, tactile perception, releases an active aura frequency that illuminates hidden nen traces, lingering emotional imprints, spatial anomalies, and physical distortions left behind by extreme kinetic events. The brick walls instantly responded. Under the golden glow of the beacon, the rain-washed stone revealed faint, glowing residue left behind by residual emotional stress, a pale, lingering echo of the night of the murder. Look, I pointed toward the brick wall near the dumpsters. A high-density smear of violent, chaotic aura residual was etched into the stone 5 feet off the ground, the exact point where the killer had pinned the victim against the wall. The tramp they arrested isn't a Nen user, Cale said, leaning closer to examine the glowing aura imprint. He couldn't have left a residual emotional imprint this dense, even in a panic. The person who killed this shopkeeper used enhancement. And not very well, either, I added, narrowing my eyes. Look at the vector of the strike. Reconstructing the scene, I raised my left hand, holding out my palm toward the alley's entrance. Soul Vanguard. Flare, the sleek, knightly construct of Soul Vanguard, materialized beside me in a shroud of golden aura. Operating on my mental intent, the construct stepped over to the wall, raising its aura-forged blade to match the angle of the glowing residual mark on the stone. As the construct aligned its stance, the spatial threads of the Beacon of the Unwavering linked the residual aura to the construct's positioning, creating a glowing, three-dimensional reconstruction of the attack. The attacker was right-handed, at least 6 feet tall, and wore high-grade leather riding boots, I observed, pointing to a deep, precise indentation in the soft mortar near the ground, an imprint left by a heavy heel coated in a thin layer of shoe. The strike wasn't a random mugging. It was a clean, downward execution strike aimed at the base of the skull. Cale tapped his cane against the floor, a sharp, dangerous gleam entering his eyes. A targeted hit disguised as a robbery. The shopkeeper owed money to someone powerful, and they used a local enforcer to clean up the debt. When they saw a nameless vagrant from Meteor City sleeping nearby, they dumped the bloodied coat on him and called the police. I finished the sentence, my knuckles whitening as I clenched my fist. Quick conviction for the prosecutor, debt settled for the mob, and a nameless trash dweller takes the fall. The clue in the shadows. The Beacon of the Unwavering pulsed one final time before fading back into my aura. But in that final burst of light, a faint, metallic reflection caught my eye, lodged deep within a tiny crack between 2 drainage bricks near the bottom of the wall. Using a golden thread from Thread of Unbroken Will, I flicked the object free, catching it in my palm. It was a small, custom silver cufflink, stamped with the crest of a prominent local casino, the Golden Helm. I looked at Cale, a cold, unshakable smile settling onto my face as my golden-green aura hummed softly under my coat. We have the motive, we have the residual Nen proof, and now we have the killer's signet, I said, slipping the silver cufflink into a protective pouch. Let's go pay the Golden Helm a visit. Chapter 107. The Velvet Shadow. Date September 20th, 1989. Location, the Golden Helm Casino, Spokane, Yorbia Republic. The Golden Helm towered over Spokane's financial district, a towering spectacle of neon lights, velvet curtains, and the constant, rhythmic clatter of roulette wheels. To the public, it was a high-class playground for Yorbia's political elite. To the underworld, it was the primary laundering house for the regional syndicate. Rain streamed down the dark glass exterior as Cale and I stood on the roof of the adjacent bank building, 50 feet above the casino's private executive balcony. The owner is Marcus Vance, Cale said softly, holding a dossier pulled from our association database. Former blacklist target who bought his way out of prosecution through local political donations. He keeps 3 private Nen bodyguards on his payroll at all times. 3 bodyguards won't save him, I replied, adjusting my coat. I took a deep breath, aligning my specialist channels. With a quiet exhale, I wrapped my entire body, my clothes, and my presence in a flawless layer of In. My golden-green aura vanished instantly from sight, leaving behind 0 presence, 0 sound, and 0 Nen trace. Beside me, Cale executed the same, hiding his aura so completely he seemed to dissolve into the damp night air. Thread of Unbroken Will, I whispered. Swish, swish. 2 thin, completely invisible ribbon-like tendrils of transmuted aura shot across the gap between the buildings. The elastic threads anchored themselves quietly to the underside of Vance's second-story balcony. With a slight flex of my arm, the threads retracted instantly, pulling Cale and me across the open gap in complete silence, landing on the wet balustrade like 2 falling leaves. Inside the sanctum. Through the tinted double-glass doors, Marcus Vance sat behind a massive mahogany desk, pouring himself 2 fingers of scotch. Standing across from him was a tall, broad-shouldered man in a charcoal suit, a man whose right sleeve was noticeably missing a custom silver cufflink. The tramp's hearing is tomorrow morning, boss, the broad-shouldered enforcer said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. The prosecutor guaranteed the judge will sign the conviction. He's going to a maximum security state facility by noon. Vance took a slow sip of his scotch, smirking as he set the crystal glass down. And the shopkeeper's books? Burned, the enforcer replied. The 4 million Jenny debt died with him. Nobody suspects a thing. The police didn't even bother taking fingerprints. They saw a Meteor City trash dweller with blood on his sleeve and called it a day. Vance chuckled, shaking his head. God bless the legal system. Those garbage heap dwellers are useful for something after all. The unseen web, outside on the balcony, my knuckles turned white under my gloves. I didn't rush through the glass doors. Instead, I raised my right hand, extending 5 invisible golden threads through the tiny ventilation slit above the balcony door. The threads slithered silently across the ceiling, attaching tiny invisible nodes of Beacon of the Unwavering to the 4 corners of the office. In my mind's eye, the room's entire audio, spatial layout, and Nen pressure mapped out with absolute precision. We have the full verbal confession, Cale whispered into my ear, holding a microcassette recorder linked directly to my Aura Thread's acoustic feedback. Every word recorded on high-grade magnetic tape. A tape can be lost by a corrupt prosecutor, I murmured back, my voice cold as ice. We need Vance, his enforcer, and the prosecutor in the same room, with the chief magistrate watching. I flicked my wrist. A single elastic thread reached into Vance's open jacket hanging on the coat rack, quietly hooking his personal encrypted ledger, the book detailing every bribe paid to the local prosecutor, and sliding it through the door seam straight into my hand. A quiet leaving. Got it, I whispered, holding the heavy leather-bound ledger against my chest. Vance set his glass down, suddenly frowning as he looked over at the coat rack. Did you feel a draft? The broad-shouldered enforcer instantly raised his guard, his eyes darting toward the balcony as a thin layer of Ken flared around his arms. Stay here, boss. The enforcer stomped over to the glass doors, ripping them open with his gun drawn, pointing it into the empty rain on the balcony. There was no one there. 50 feet away, perched on the roof of the opposite building, Cale and I stood under the shelter of our umbrellas, looking down at the casino. In my right hand, I held the bribe ledger. In Cale's hand, the recorded confession tape. Tomorrow morning, 09 a.m. at the Spokane County Courthouse, I said, a cold, sharp smile spreading across my face as my aura flickered briefly beneath my coat. Let's go buy an innocent man his freedom. The enforcer stepped back inside, slamming the balcony doors shut against the rain. Must have been the wind. He didn't know how wrong he was. We weren't on the opposite roof. I hadn't left. The unseen storm, boom! The heavy double-glass doors didn't just open. They disintegrated into a shower of diamond-like shards as a massive kinetic wave from the broom of the Wrath Angel pulverized the entire balcony frame. Before Vance or his enforcer could even draw a weapon, 2 golden aura tendrils from Thread of Unbroken Will shot across the room. One wrapped tightly around Vance's throat, slamming him against his mahogany desk, while the other snagged the enforcer's gun arm, snapping his wrist with a brutal crack. What the? The enforcer screamed, his Ken flickering wildly as he tried to pull free. In a flash of golden green light, my 2 Soul Vanguard constructs materialized on either side of the room. The defensive knight pinned the 2 secondary bodyguards against the wall with its heater shield, while the offensive vanguard brought the pommel of its broadsword straight into the chief enforcer's solar plexus. Persian rug. I stepped through the shattered frame, the rain dripping off my coat as my specialist aura filled the office with crushing, tranquil pressure. Marcus Vance, I said smoothly, picking up the tape recorder and slipping his bribe ledger into my coat. Change of plans. You and your muscle have an early court date. September 21st, 1989, 09 a.m., Spokane County Courthouse, Department 3. Inside the packed, mahogany-paneled courtroom, the air was suffocatingly tense. The judge was already raising his gavel to finalize the expedited sentencing. In the defendant's chair sat the frail, dirt-smeared homeless man from Meteor City, hunched over in heavy iron chains, his eyes filled with silent, terrified confusion. Beside him, the prosecutor sat with a self-satisfied smirk, tapping his pen on his clean desk. Regarding the state versus the unnamed vagrant, the judge intoned coldly, in light of the defendant's lack of citizenship and overwhelming circumstantial evidence, this court hereby finds... Bang! The massive oak double doors at the back of the courtroom were blown off their brass hinges, crashing onto the marble aisle with a deafening boom. The entire courtroom erupted into gasps and screams. Bailiffs drew their sidearms, but froze instantly as an intense golden-green spiritual pressure flooded the room, heavy enough to make the air itself feel like thick glass. I walked down the central aisle, hands tucked casually into my coat pockets. Behind me, Cale walked with his silver cane clicking rhythmically against the stone, dragging Marcus Vance and his broad-shouldered enforcer, both tightly bound in glowing, unbreakable aura threads. "Hold your gavel, Your Honor," I called out, my voice ringing clearly through the silent hall. "Who the hell are you?" the prosecutor shouted, slamming his hands on his desk as his face flushed red. "Bailiffs, arrest them! This is a state court!" "Hunter Association Special Intervention," Cale interjected smoothly, holding up our official double-star hunter credentials. The golden licenses caught the light, instantly silencing the armed guards. Under international treaty, hunter authority supersedes local municipal court proceedings when systemic corruption or high-level crimes are involved. I stopped right in front of the judge's bench, tossing 3 items onto the clerk's table. 1. The microcassette audio recording of Vance and his enforcer explicitly admitting to the murder and framing the tramp. 2. Vance's personal ledger detailing 4 years of monthly bribes paid directly to the prosecutor sitting right next to us. 3. The star iron forensic analysis proving the blood on the victim matched the enforcer's enhancement signature, not the defendant's. The prosecutor's face went from red to ghostly white in 3 seconds flat. He looked down at the ledger open to his name, his pen slipping from his trembling fingers. "Your Honor," I said, looking up at the judge with a calm, razor-sharp smile. "The real killer is sitting on the floor behind me, his employer is bound next to him, and your prosecutor is on your ledger. I suggest you sign an immediate dismissal for the man in chains." The judge stared at the evidence, then at the trembling prosecutor, and finally at the bound casino boss. With a heavy shaking hand, he brought the wooden gavel down. "Thwack! Case dismissed with prejudice," the judge declared, his voice strained. "Bailiffs, take the prosecutor and Mr. Vance into custody immediately." A different future. Outside on the grand stone steps of the courthouse, the afternoon rain had finally stopped, replaced by rays of cool sunlight breaking through the gray clouds. The elderly man from Meteor City stood at the top of the stairs, his heavy iron chains removed. He looked down at his clean hands, then up at Cale and me, his eyes brimming with silent, overwhelming tears. He had no words, no official name to give us, but the deep, respectful bow he gave us carried the weight of a lifetime. "We arranged a transport for him back to the eastern border," Cale said softly, leaning on his cane as he watched the man step into a private vehicle, with proper papers and enough funds to live comfortably. I stood on the marble steps, looking up at the clear sky as my golden-green aura settled into a quiet, warm hum inside my chest. The fuse that would have detonated 30 living bombs in 1993 was officially extinguished. Chapter 108, The Return to St. Jude's, date, October 2nd, 1989. Location, St. Jude's Orphanage, District 4, Meteor City. The interior of St. Jude's was warm, smelling faintly of vegetable broth and wood smoke. We sat around the long pine dining table in the communal hall, a room where Cale and I had spent countless nights planning our survival before we ever stepped out into the world. Sister Elena poured hot tea into ceramic mugs, while Thomas leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms over his chest. "I wonder how things have really been here," I asked, looking between the two of them as I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "With the local power struggles, and everything that happened while we were gone." Thomas grunted softly, looking out the window toward the towering mountains of scrap metal that framed District 4. The aftermath of the district conflict. "The district civil war is completely over," Thomas said, his voice flat and practical. "When the rival mafia-backed factions tried to push their way into District 4, Krollo and the troops stepped in directly. It wasn't a long fight. The Spiders made an example of the faction leaders, wiped out their enforcers in a single afternoon, and established absolute order across the eastern sectors." "The troop winning brought stability, at least," Cale mused, sipping his tea. "No more rogue warlords shaking down orphanages for protection money. It gave us room to breathe. Sister Elena agreed softly, sitting down beside me and patting my arm. And because of the logistics pipeline Kale set up for us in York New, we haven't had to bury a single child from starvation or preventable fever. She smiled warmly, looking toward the far corner of the hall where several older kids were helping younger ones with reading lessons. A changing generation. Some of the older boys you used to play with, like Marco and Leo, they grew up fast, Sister Elena continued, her eyes shining with pride. When they turned 15, we used Kale's network to send them out to York New and Republic cities. Marco is working as an apprentice mechanic now, and Leo got a job at a logistics firm. They send back half their paychecks every month to support the parish. And the ones who stayed? I asked. They chose to stand ground, Thomas replied, nodding toward 2 teenage boys near the pantry. Some new faces arrived, abandoned kids brought in from the outer rim trash heaps. The older ones who stayed behind are teaching them how to read, how to forge basic tools, and how to protect themselves. They run the medical supply distribution for District 4 now. It was a strange, beautiful cycle. A place built on discarded things was actively growing human lives capable of building their own future. The unspoken bond. Thomas walked over, setting a heavy hand on my shoulder, his dark eyes looking at me with a deep, quiet gravity. The last time you were here, Ren, you couldn't even stand, Thomas said quietly. After Krollo stole your ability and left you broken, we brought you back to this parish to keep you safe while you nursed your spiritual nodes. When you left this hall for Greed Island, you were a hollow man carrying a broken soul. He looked at the steady, golden-green warmth radiating from my shoulders. Seeing you stand here now, strong, whole, and with a specialist aura denser than anything I've ever felt, it lets us know that Krollo didn't break you. You came back stronger. He took my original Hatsu, I said, a calm, razor-sharp smile settling onto my face as my sacred wayfarer hummed in absolute equilibrium. So I built something he can never steal. Sister Elena smiled, tears welling in her eyes as she patted my hand. And that is why you will always have a home here, Ren. Chapter 108.5 revised The Secret of the Wrathful Broom. Date October 2nd, 1989, later that evening. Location, St. Jude's Orphanage, kitchen and yard. Night fell over District 4, blanketed by the quiet hum of the parish. After dinner, Kale and I sat on the back porch steps, sipping bitter chicory tea while watching Thomas chop firewood under the dim glow of an oil lantern. Suddenly, Kale turned to me, his jaw clenching as if he'd been holding back a burning question for hours. Ren, Kale said, pointing a finger at me, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Fire away, I said, leaning back. Your Hatsu, I get the general concept of how you rebuilt your aura channels. It's brilliant, Kale said, rubbing his temples. But one of your primary offensive constructs, the Wrath Angel's broom? Why a broom? You're a specialist-level hunter. You could construct a divine broadsword, a holy spear, or a flaming scythe. Why on earth did you manifest a massive, terrifying, sacred broom? He didn't know about the true engine behind it, the secret dual post-mortem resonance operating silently within the deepest vault of my soul. Nobody knew about that. To Kale and the rest of the world, it was simply my unique, newly forged specialist Hatsu. Before I could answer, a loud smack echoed from inside the kitchen, followed by a squeal. Out! Out of my kitchen, you filthy stray mutt! Sister Elena's stern voice boomed through the open window. A split second later, a scruffy hound bolted out the back door, trailing a cloud of dust. Right behind it was Sister Elena, brandishing an ancient, frayed straw broom like a warhammer. With practiced, terrifying speed, she swept the dust air with such ferocity that the wind pressure literally blew the dog off the porch steps and sent it scurrying into the scrap heap. Sister Elena dusted off her hands, gave us a warm, serene smile, and said, "Good evening, boys," before ducking back inside to finish the dishes. Kale sat frozen, his tea mug stopping halfway to his mouth. His eyes were wide as saucers as he slowly looked from the kitchen doorway to me. "No way," Kale whispered, the realization hitting him like a freight train. "You derived a Nen construct from Sister Elena's sweeping technique?" "Think about it, Kale," I said, grinning. Who was the single most terrifying force in all of Meteor City? Was it the Phantom Troop? Was it the local warlords? No, Kale muttered, a look of profound enlightenment washing over his face. It was Sister Elena when we tracked mud across her freshly mopped floors. Exactly, I said, nodding solemnly. Her broom cleared away dirt, vermin, and misbehaving orphans with absolute, unyielding authority. When I was rebuilding my aura after Krollo wiped me out, I needed a visual anchor that represented purging impurities with absolute force. The blueprint was right there in my childhood trauma. Thomas stopped his axe mid-swing, leaning against the chopping block with a wide, knowing smirk. See? I told ya! Thomas called out across the yard, letting out a deep, chuckling cough. I told you the kid didn't pick it from a book. That broom design was forged in the fires of Sunday morning chores. Cale buried his face in both hands, groaning in utter disbelief while I couldn't hold it back anymore. My laughter echoed out into the cool Meteor City night, ringing across the quiet courtyard of St. Jude's, while my true dual post-mortem engine hummed safely, silently, in the deepest shadow of my soul. Chapter 109. The Horizon of 1990. Date, October 5th, 1989. Location, District 4 Perimeter, Meteor City. Association Airship, the Albatross. The morning mist over Meteor City tasted of damp iron and coal smoke. We stood near the rusty perimeter gate of District 4, where the dirt trail met the paved military access road. Sister Elena stood wrapped in her heavy wool shawl, holding a basket of freshly baked hardtack biscuits, while Thomas stood beside her with his arms folded over his chest. You don't have to stay away so long next time, Ren, Sister Elena said softly, stepping forward to adjust the collar of my dark coat. Her hands were warm, her touch gentle. The world outside is big, but your room in the back parish will always be swept clean. I'll remember, sister, I smiled, taking the basket of biscuits. Thomas stepped up, offering a thick, calloused palm. Watch your back out there. The Hunter Association has deep pockets, but it's full of sharks. Sharks are easy, I chuckled, gripping his hand firmly. It's the bureaucrats you have to watch out for. Cale tapped his silver cane against the damp gravel, tipping his brimmed hat toward them both. Keep the parish safe, Thomas. Our York New Supply shipments will keep arriving on the 1st of every month like clockwork. With a final wave, we turned and walked down the access road toward the ridge, leaving the scrap metal skyline of Meteor City behind us. Boarding the Albatross. At the crest of the ridge, waiting on the private association helipad, sat the Albatross, a sleek two-engine long-range hunter transport airship assigned to us following our S-rank mission success in Kaken. The brass propellers hummed with a quiet, rhythmic vibration as the boarding ramp lowered into the high grass. Welcome back aboard, Mr. Wren, Mr. Cale, the flight captain said with a formal bow as we stepped inside the climate-controlled cabin. We have received sealed directives directly from Chairman Nitero's office. Cale tossed his travel bag onto one of the plush leather seats, leaning his silver cane against the mahogany briefing table. What does the old man want now? I walked over to the central hollow table, setting down the basket of Sister Elena's biscuits, as the captain slotted an encrypted memory card into the console. The chairman's mandate, BT. A three-dimensional holographic projection flared to life in the center of the room. It was a pre-recorded message from Chairman Isaac Nitero himself. The old man sat cross-legged on a traditional straw mat, casually tossing a wooden ball between his hands, a playful yet razor-sharp glint in his eyes. Hunter Association Direct Order, Level 4 Clearance. Chairman Isaac Nitero, 2, Specialist Wren and Double Star Hunter Cale. Subject, The Uncharted Ruins of the Padokea Ridge, 1990 Project. Ho-ho, Nitero's holographic image chuckled, stroking his long white beard. I hear you boys managed to clean up that nasty business with the Kakin border convoy, and even took a little detour back to your old neighborhood. Impressive work, Ren. Your aura control is looking far livelier than it did a year ago. Nitero caught the wooden ball, his expression shifting into something a bit more focused. Now then, down to business. The association is preparing a major international initiative for 1990, a joint expedition into the ancient subterranean ruins beneath the Padokea Mountains. We're talking prehistoric Nen technology, lost specialist glyphs, and high-density aura traps that make Greed Island look like a playground. The projection shifted, displaying a high-resolution top-down map of a massive, spiral-shaped cavern system deep beneath a mountain range. I need 2 hunters with top-tier spatial perception, high-density defensive capabilities, and absolute field discipline to lead the Vanguard unit, Netero continued. Your 500 million Jenny bounty and level 4 vault clearance are already activated. Take the rest of 1989 to rest, train, and gear up. The holographic message faded out, leaving the blueprint of the Padokia ruins floating softly in the air. The path to masterwork. I leaned against the mahogany table, looking down at the ancient glyphs carved into the cavern blueprints. Inside the quietest sanctuary of my soul, the secret dual post-mortem engine hummed in perfect, silent harmony. With my sacred wayfarer fully restored, a massive fortune in our accounts, and 6 full years remaining before the fateful York New auction of 1996, the world felt vastly open. Subterranean ruins with prehistoric specialist glyphs? Cale said, a rare, genuinely intrigued smile spreading across his face as he tapped his cane against the floor. Sounds like the perfect playground to test out your new techniques. And a great place to pick up some ancient star iron materials, I added, looking out the airship window as the Albatross lifted smoothly into the clouds, leaving the gray expanse of Meteor City far below. I looked at my hands, 16 years old, possessing the mind of a veteran, the soul of a survivor, and an unshakable future waiting to be written. Set course for the Northern Training Grounds, Captain, I said calmly. We have work to do before 1990. Chapter 110, The Sunless Spiral. Date, April 12, 1990. Location, Padokia, Subterranean Ruins. Depth, 1,200 meters below sea level. The air in the subterranean depths didn't taste like dirt. It tasted like ozone, ancient brass, and pressurized aura. 6 months of preparation at the Northern Training Grounds had sharpened our teamwork to a knife's edge. Now, 17 years old, standing over 6 feet tall in my reinforced hunter cloak, I led the Vanguard unit through the colossal stone archway that marked the entrance to the 3rd tier of the Padokia ruins. Beside me, Cale walked with his silver cane, clicking rhythmically against the hand-carved basalt tiles. Behind us, 6 elite Hunter Association excavators and combat specialists carried high-density aura survey equipment, their eyes wide as they scanned the towering subterranean highway. The ambient NEN pressure down here is nearly 400 microunits, Cale remarked, holding up an atmospheric gauge. A normal human would suffer organ failure within 10 minutes just from the spatial weight. Even licensed hunters need 10 maintained constantly. Keep your guards up. I instructed the crew behind us, my voice calm and steady. The glyphs embedded in these walls aren't decorative. The prehistoric glyphs, I held my hand out toward the basalt wall. Etched deep into the stone were sweeping geometric runes that flickered with a faint, iridescent violet light, lost by specialist glyphs dating back over 3,000 years. They were designed to harvest the Earth's natural geothermal energy and convert it into raw, unrefined emission traps. Beacon of the Unwavering, I whispered softly. Flash. A tiny, brilliant orb of golden-green aura detached from my fingertip, floating upward toward the vaulted ceiling. The moment my active pulse swept across the ancient hallway, the hidden mechanism of the ruins reacted. Rumble. Crack! The violet glyphs on the walls flared violently. From the darkness ahead, the stone floor split open, revealing a 50-meter stretch of floor tiles floating over a pit of liquid aura density. A trap designed to instantly crush the spirit nodes of anyone without absolute specialist control. Vanguard hold position, I ordered, stepping forward, clearing the path. Allow me, Cale said, stepping up beside me with a sharp smirk. He didn't draw a blade. Instead, Cale raised his silver cane and struck the butt of it cleanly against the stone floor. A brilliant wave of transmuted silver aura surged forward, freezing the fluctuating violet glyphs in place by neutralizing their electrical conductivity. Spatial disruption frozen, Cale reported calmly. You're up, Ren. I stepped into the center of the hall, taking a deep, rhythmic breath as the dual post-mortem engine operating deep within the secret vault of my soul hummed in absolute silent resonance. Flare! My golden-green specialist aura erupted around me in a serene, perfectly balanced storm. With a smooth gesture, the broom of the Wrath Angel materialized in my right hand, its heavy metallic bristles shimmering under the subterranean dark as a massive flood of raw enhancement and transmutation wrapped around the shaft. Technique. The Grand Sweep. Dajuhua, Great Purge. Channeling high-density emitted aura through the broom's sweep to violently clear spatial anomalies, elemental traps, and hostile Nen imprints. Swoosh! Boom! I swept the heavy broom in a wide, horizontal arc across the corridor. The kinetic shockwave, backed by the sheer weight of my post-mortem engine, swept forward like a localized typhoon. The unstable, violet trap glyphs were instantly shattered and purged from the walls, blowing away thousands of years of accumulated hostile Nen in a single roaring flash of light. The floating floor tiles settled back into place with a solid, satisfying thud, forming a completely safe, stable stone bridge across the chasm. The heart of the ruins. The 6 excavators behind us stood with their jaws slack, staring at the cleanly purged hallway in complete awe. Path cleared, I said, resting the heavy metallic broom on my shoulder, my aura settling back into a quiet, warm hum beneath my coat. Captain, bring up the survey teams. Tier 3 is secure. Kale walked up beside me, looking down into the massive spiral cavern that opened up ahead, a subterranean city of lost temples, ancient vaults, and untouched star iron deposits resting beneath the core of the mountain. Netero was right, Kale chuckled, tapping his cane against the newly stabilized stone floor. This place is a gold mine. We'll have enough star iron and prehistoric specialist research to fuel our operations for the next decade. And we've got plenty of time, I replied, looking out over the vast subterranean horizon. Chapter 111, The Magician in the Rain. Date, November 12th, 1990. Location, downtown Lingen City, Yorbia Republic. A month after wrapping up the Padokea subterranean ruins expedition, Kale had departed for the southern continent on a solo intel gathering assignment for the association. Left with a few weeks of downtime before my next mandate, I found myself in Lingen City, a sprawling metropolis famous for its neon-lit arcades, towering glass plazas, and perpetual late autumn drizzle. It was nearly midnight. I stood under the overhang of a closed antique shop, adjusting my dark coat while watching neon signs reflect off the wet asphalt. Shuffle, shuffle. A rhythmic, dry sound cut through the steady pitter-patter of the rain. 20 feet away, leaning casually against a brass lamppost, stood a tall figure draped in a long white trench coat. His magenta hair was slicked back, defying the rain, and his teardrop face paint caught the yellow streetlight in a sharp, theatrical gleam. My breath hitched for a fraction of a second, a reaction I instantly buried under my 10. Hisoka Moro. We had never met face-to-face before, but my heart pounded with the uncanny, surreal weight of my secret past life, the memories of the anime and manga from my world before I was reincarnated into this universe. I knew his face, his Nen abilities, his obsession with unripe fruit, and the deadly game he played as a fake member of the Phantom Troupe. He held a deck of pristine playing cards, flicking them from hand to hand in a fluid, hypnotic arc that didn't let a single drop of water touch the paper. An unexpected encounter. At 17, standing 6 feet tall in my hunter coat, I didn't reach for a weapon. My golden green specialist aura remained tight, smooth, and perfectly contained around my skin, not a single drop of spiritual energy leaking out. It's rude to stare, kid, I said calmly, my voice cutting cleanly through the rain. Hisoka's grin widened, revealing a row of sharp white teeth. He caught the deck with one hand, shuffling it into a tight fan between his long fingers. My. What an exceptionally delicious aura to stumble upon in such an ordinary city. Hisoka purred, taking a slow, swaying step forward. I was simply passing through to collect a bounty, but finding a 17-year-old hunter standing alone in the rain feels like finding a rare gift on the sidewalk. Hisoka's yellow eyes narrowed into slitted crescents as a sudden, intense spike of ren burst from his shoulders, filling the quiet street with a suffocating, bloodthirsty pressure that rattled the antique shop's glass window. "Tell me, little hunter," Hisoka whispered, his cards shimmering with a thin layer of shu. "Are you ripe enough to pick?" The standoff in Lingen City, I didn't step back. Deep within the secret vault of my soul, my dual post-mortem engine hummed in absolute silent equilibrium. I didn't summon the broom of the Wrath Angel, nor did I manifest my soul vanguard constructs. Showing your full hand to an unknown, dangerous transmuter on a random street corner was an amateur's mistake. Instead, I simply shifted my weight into a grounded stance, my eyes meeting his yellow gaze with razor-like focus. I used my knowledge of his nature from my previous life. Hisoka thrived on fear and weakness, but he respected absolute, unshakable confidence. "If you try to pick me right now," I said, my tone flat, steady, and devoid of fear, "you'll break your fingers." Silence stretched between us in the rain. Hisoka stared at me for 3 long, agonizing seconds. The toxic, bloodthirsty pressure of his aura hovered in the air like a raised blade, testing my composure, looking for a tremor in my breathing, a flicker of panic, or a single gap in my ten. He found none. Slowly, the murderous aura around Hisoka dissolved back into his skin, replaced by a low, musical chuckle that vibrated through his chest. "Ah, perfect," Hisoka giggled, fanning his face with 3 playing cards. "The composure of a true predator. You aren't a green fruit, but you're still growing, aren't you? It would be such a waste to spoil the harvest before it reaches its peak." A promise for Yorknu. Hisoka tucked his deck back into his sleeve, stepping past me down the sidewalk, as if we were 2 old acquaintances taking an evening stroll. "What's your name, little hunter?" Hisoka asked smoothly as he passed my shoulder. "Ren," I replied, keeping my eyes fixed ahead. Hisoka paused mid-step, his head tilting slightly to the side, a sinister, delighted smirk spreading across his face. "Ren," Hisoka murmured, tasting the name on his tongue. "Keep growing, Ren. I have a feeling a hunter of your caliber won't want to miss the grand gathering there. He doesn't know I already know about his deal with Krollo, or the fate that awaits the troop in Yorknu." I thought silently, keeping my face completely expressionless. My knowledge of the future remained my ultimate hidden trump card. "I'll be in Yorknu," I replied smoothly. "Good." Hisoka chuckled, vanishing around the corner of the neon-lit alley with a flick of his heels. "Grow big and strong, Ren. I'll be waiting." I stood alone under the antique shop overhang, listening to his footsteps fade into the city noise. I took a slow, deep breath, letting my aura settle back into a tranquil hum beneath my coat. Chapter 112 revised, The Southern Ledger and the Star Iron Forge. Date, December 18th, 1990. Location, Private Workshop Hunter Association Subbase 04, Yorbia. Snow began to fall over the mountain valley surrounding Subbase 04, coating the reinforced steel hangars in a layer of quiet white. Inside my private workshop, the heat was intense, driven by the roaring furnace where raw chunks of star iron from the Padokia ruins were being refined down into high-density aura conductors. At 17, I stood by the anvil in a black sleeveless working shirt, sweat glistening on my collarbone as my golden-green aura channeled smoothly through a heavy forging hammer. Thwack! Thwack! The heavy iron struck the glowing metal, sending a shower of brilliant golden sparks across the workshop floor. Click! Tap! The thick steel doors of the workshop slid open, bringing in a gust of cold winter air along with the rhythmic tapping of a silver cane. Cale walked in, brushing fresh snow off the collar of his long wool coat. Now in his mid-40s, a seasoned veteran double-star hunter whose presence commanded absolute respect, my mentor looked travel-worn from a month of continuous undercover operations in the southern continent. Yet, his posture remained as sharp and composed as the day he first took me in back in 1982. "You're going to burn down Netero's sub-base if you keep that furnace at maximum capacity, Ren," Cale remarked dryly, pulling off his leather gloves and tossing a thick, leather-bound dossier onto my workbench. I set the hammer down on the anvil, wiping my brow with a towel as my aura settled back into a dormant hum. "Welcome back, Cale," I smiled, grabbing a bottle of cold water from the cooler. "How was the southern continent?" Intel from the deep south, Cale leaned against the heavy workbench, tapping a finger against the dossier. "Profitable," Cale said softly, his tone dropping into a quiet, serious frequency. "The Southern Syndicate tried to hijack our Yorknu supply routes to District 4. I spent 3 weeks tracking their board of directors through 3 different offshore bank accounts. The mafia heads involved have been permanently retired, and their logistics network now belongs to us." He looked over at me, his sharp, experienced eyes taking in the glowing star iron ingots resting on the anvil, nodding approvingly at his student's progress. "I heard you had a little run-in while I was away," Cale added, raising an eyebrow. "Reports from Lingen City Police said a sudden, brief surge of high-density transmutation aura rattled a street corner in the shopping district last month." "Just a passing tourist," I replied smoothly, taking a sip of water. "A magician playing with playing cards." Kale's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press further. He trusted my instincts as both his finest student and a double-star hunter in my own right. As long as he didn't disrupt our schedule, we have bigger fish to fry. The joint project, the Aegis Anvil, Kale unrolled a large architectural schematic across the workbench, weighted down by 4 heavy iron bolts. The blueprint displayed a massive, mobile aura forging unit designed to integrate star iron directly into hunter gear, weapons, and spatial conduits. The Padokia expedition gave us over 2 tons of unrefined star iron, Kale explained, pointing to the central mechanism on the blueprint. Standard blacksmiths can't mold this material. It requires a constant, high-pressure specialist aura stream to forge without shattering. Which is where my Sacred Wayfarer engine comes in. I nodded, looking at the complex schematic. Exactly, Kale said, a proud, sharp smile spreading across his face as he looked at how far I had come since he picked me up 9 years ago. If we build the Aegis Anvil, we won't just be refining star iron for our own gear. We can manufacture high-grade NEN conductive equipment for double and triple star hunters across the association. We'll turn our 500 million Jenny seed capital into billions before 1995. Financial dominance, top-tier equipment, and a self-sustaining pipeline for Meteor City, I mused, leaning over the blueprint. And absolute readiness for whatever comes next, Kale added, holding out a hand. I gripped my mentor's hand firmly over the blueprints, the heat of the forge reflecting in the glass windows of the workshop. The foundation was forged in star iron, funded by the underworld, and anchored by an unshakable bond between master and student. The years ahead would belong to us. Equipment for elite hunters. Chapter 113, The Silver Shadow over Mount Zaldik. Date, March 14, 1990. Location, High Security Estate, Republic of Padokia. The rain over the mountain estate was relentless, pounding against the bulletproof glass of the top-floor executive suite. Following our recent work with the association, Kale and I had accepted a high-priority Special S-rank protection directive. A prominent Padokian mining tycoon, the man who controlled the legal trade routes surrounding Mount Kukuru, had become the primary target of an elite assassination contract. Kale is handling the lower perimeter security with the private guard units, I said softly, adjusting the cuffs of my dark coat as I stood by the grand mahogany doors. Inside the suite, the trembling tycoon sat behind his desk, clutching a glass of brandy with both shaking hands. Are you sure we're safe up here, Hunter? The rumor says they hired the best, the ones from the mountain. You paid for the association's top defense, I replied calmly, my golden-green specialist aura remaining completely smooth and contained under my coat. Stay behind the desk. Boom! A thunderous explosion rocked the lower courtyard. Down below, heavy gunfire and alarm sirens erupted simultaneously as a secondary hit squad launched a decoy assault on Kale's perimeter defenses. They're downstairs, the tycoon screamed, dropping his glass. No, I said, my eyes narrowing as my spatial perception flared with absolute precision. The decoy is downstairs. The real assassin is already in the room. The silver shadow squeak. Without a single sound of broken glass or forced locks, the air pressure in the room suddenly plummeted to absolute zero. A shadow detached itself from the high ceiling beam, landing soundlessly on the polished marble floor between me and the tycoon. Standing over 6.5 feet tall, with massive, broad shoulders and long, flowing silver hair that framed a cold, feline face, was the head of the world's most notorious assassin family, Silva Zoldyck. His intense transmutation aura didn't radiate outward. It condensed tightly around his enormous frame like a layer of liquid silver, so heavy and dense that the marble floor beneath his boots cracked under the pure weight of his presence. Move aside, Hunter, Silva said, his voice a deep, gravelly rumble that vibrated straight through my chest. My contract is with the man behind you. You have no obligation to die for his debt. Specialist versus assassin. At 17, standing tall in my dark coat, I stepped directly into his line of sight, blocking his path to the tycoon. He didn't know who I was, nor did he know a single thing about my past or my stolen Hatsu. To him, I was simply an unexpected hunter standing in his way. I took a contract of my own, Zoldyck, I replied, my voice flat, steady, and devoid of hesitation. And hunters don't break contracts. Silva's bright blue eyes locked onto mine. In a fraction of a second, his razor-sharp assassin instincts evaluated my posture, my breathing, and the flawless, unbroken layer of 10 wrapping my body. Swoosh! Without another word, Silva moved. He didn't draw a weapon. In a blur of sheer physical speed that surpassed the speed of sound, his right hand transformed into razor-sharp claws, thrusting straight toward my heart. Technique, Soul Vanguard, Iron Citadel. Clang! Boom! A blinding flash of golden-green aura erupted in front of me as my defensive Soul Vanguard construct materialized instantly, its massive heater shield absorbing the full, brutal impact of Silva's claw strike. The shockwave blew the heavy mahogany desk to splinters and shattered every window in the suite. Silva shifted his weight seamlessly in midair, spinning backward to land effortlessly 10 feet away, his silver hair swaying in the howling rain blowing through the broken windows. He looked at his right hand. His claws had been halted completely by the sheer post-mortem back density of my shield. The professional's verdict. Impressive, Silva said, his tone entirely businesslike as the silver aura around his hands flared into 2 massive crackling orbs of pure transmuted energy. A specialist with defensive density of this caliber. We can flatten this entire estate, Silva, I said, raising my hand as the broom of the Wrath Angel materialized in my grip, its heavy star iron shaft humming with raw, compressed power. But by the time our fight ends, Kale and the Association reinforcements will have secured the target, and your contract window will expire. Silva looked at the star iron broom in my hand, then at the unwavering calmness in my eyes. Slowly, the crackling energy orbs in his hands dissolved. His claws reverted back into normal fingers as he straightened his massive frame. A professional knows when a contract becomes unprofitable, Silva said calmly, sliding his hands into his belt. The target's defense was undercalculated. The contract is suspended. He turned his head slightly, giving me a rare, respectful glance. You have a fine guard, kid. My youngest son is only 3 years old right now, but I hope he develops a defense as solid as yours when he grows up. Before the rain could even touch his shoulders, Silva Zoldyck stepped backward into the outer darkness, vanishing into the storm as if he had never been there at all. I let out a slow, steady exhale, dismissing my constructs as the golden-green aura settled back into a quiet hum beneath my coat. The head of the Zoldyck family had been met and stood against. 1990 was proving that the foundation we built was truly unbreakable. Chapter 1 and 14, Silent Vespers. Date, August 19th, 1991. Location, private mansion, District of Yorbia. The letter from Father Thomas had arrived 3 days prior, delivered via our secure courier route from St. Jude's. Thomas was a man of peace now, a former hunter turned priest who spent his days tending to the orphans of Meteor City. But before he laid down his weapons, he had been a tracker. The intel he sent us was meticulous, cold, and absolute. Risnorth, a celebrated philanthropist in the public eye, was secretly the master financier behind the syndicate that had plagued District 4 for over a decade. He was the root of the human trafficking networks that had stolen countless children from the trash heaps. The association couldn't touch him due to his political immunity. The law wouldn't touch him because of his money, which meant Kale and I had to do it ourselves, in complete silence. The Manor in the Dark. The midnight rain masked the sound of our arrival. Risnorth's estate was a fortress, guarded by 30 heavily armed mercenaries, high-voltage fences, and automated Nen-detecting sensors. But to 2 double-star hunters trained in the shadow of Meteor City, it was a paper house. Using Zetsu, Kale and I slipped past the outer perimeter without disturbing a single leaf. While Kale disabled the central security node in the basement, silently snapping the necks of 3 guards before they could even draw their sidearms, I breached the 3rd-floor study through the balcony. Inside, sitting at a heavy oak desk, was Risnorth. He was a portly, silver-haired man in an expensive silk robe, casually sipping wine while reviewing ledgers detailing auction prices for human cargo. Click. The soft sound of the balcony door locking behind me made him freeze. A silent, brutal execution. Risnorth looked up, his hand darting instinctively toward a panic button under his desk. Before his finger could touch the wood, I flicked my wrist. The sacred wayfarer, thread of unbroken will, Tudhin-i, a thin, razor-sharp tendril of transmuted steel-like aura, shot across the room like a silver needle, pinning his right hand directly to the mahogany desk with a wet, sickening thud. Risnorth's eyes bulged in agony, but before he could scream, I was already across the room, using the thread's elasticity to pull myself forward instantaneously. My left hand clamped over his mouth like an iron vice, crushing his jaw so tightly he couldn't utter a single sound. His 2 personal Nen bodyguards burst into the room from the side doors, their hands flaring with aura. Swoosh! Kale materialized from the shadows behind them. With 2 swift, silent strikes of his silver cane, he shattered their throat cartilages before they could even form a single hatsu. They collapsed to the carpet without making a sound, twitching silently as their life faded. I looked down into Risnorth's terrified, bloodshot eyes. "This is from District 4, I whispered coldly into his ear. "Father Thomas sends his regards." With a clean, ruthless twist of my wrist, I snapped his neck. The philanthropist's body went completely limp, dropping onto the leather chair like a sack of lead. Shadows in the night, Kale stepped over the fallen bodyguards, pulling a clean silk handkerchief from his pocket to wipe the tip of his cane. "Area clear," Kale said softly, his voice completely calm. "No alarms triggered. No aura signatures recorded by the estate censors." I gathered Risnorth's private ledgers from the desk, intel that would permanently dismantle the remaining syndicate cells across the continent, and slid them inside my coat. I opened a small portal to the resting horizon to deposit the ledgers safely inside our pocket dimension before closing it without a trace. I gave one final look at the dead trafficker, making sure not a single trace of my physical evidence remained in the room. We slipped out through the balcony, vanishing into the torrential rain as silently as we had arrived. By morning, the news would break across all major networks. Philanthropist Risnorth found dead in his home. The police would find no forced entry, no footprints, and no clues. The identity of the assassin would remain an absolute mystery to the world. But in the quiet courtyard of St. Jude's orphanage, Father Thomas would light a single candle, knowing that justice had finally been served. Chapter 115, The Absolute Pinnacle. Date, October 24th, 1991. Location, Zero Ground Dojo, Hunter Association Headquarters. The floor of Netero's private Zero Ground Dojo was constructed from solid, high-density tungsten granite, engineered specifically to withstand the force of human monsters. Chairman Isaac Netero stood in the center of the vast ring, wearing his simple, white, heart kanji, wooden sleeve shirt and wooden geta clogs. His eyes were closed, his breathing so slow and deep it seemed to bend the air pressure inside the room. Around the perimeter of the room, Kale stood leaning on his cane, watching silently with his arms crossed. "You've grown immensely since you rebuilt your spirit nodes, Ren," Netero said, opening one sharp, dark eye with a faint, amused smile. "A young specialist who harmonizes all 5 basic categories, powered by a secret engine that even old men like me can feel humming in the air." At 19, standing over 6 feet tall in my dark training trousers and light linen shirt, I settled into a grounded, balanced stance. "I need to know where I stand, Chairman," I said, my voice steady. "Before we step into the big leagues of the mid-90s, I need a true baseline." Netero's smile widened, his long white mustache twitching slightly. "Ho-ho, then don't hold back, boy. Phase 1. Unshackling the Sacred Wayfarer." Boom! I didn't start with small probes. I released the full, unbridled pressure of the Sacred Wayfarer. A dense, radiant storm of golden-green aura erupted around me, illuminating the entire granite dojo. Deep within the vault of my soul, the dual post-mortem engine roared into absolute resonance. Technique. The Sacred Wayfarer. Thread of Unbroken Will. Aegis of the Faithful. Swoosh! Flash! I transmuted 3 razor-sharp steel-like tendrils of aura into the stone floor, using their extreme elasticity to slingshot my body forward at Mach 2 speed. My body was wrapped in the golden armor of Aegis of the Faithful, locking my physical defense into an unbreakable state. In less than a millisecond, I closed the 50-foot gap, my fist coated in a massive concentration of Ko, aimed cleanly at Netero's shoulder. Clang! Netero didn't even shift his feet. His right arm moved in a fluid golden arc, so fast it bypassed perception entirely. A single palm strike deflected my Ko punch, sending a shockwave that cracked the granite floor for 30 yards behind me. Phase 2. Unleashing the full array. I didn't stop. I seamlessly shifted through my entire toolkit. A mission. Beacon of the Unwavering. I fired 6 radiant, homing star-shaped projectiles upward. They zipped through the air, curving down from all angles toward Netero's blind spots. Number 2. Manipulation. Soul Vanguard. 2 fully autonomous aura armor constructs materialized beside me, one wielding a heavy war lance, the other a massive tower shield, rushing Netero simultaneously without requiring a fraction of my mental focus. 3. Conjuration Sanctuary Waypoint. I struck the floor, opening a localized portal to the resting horizon beneath my feet, vanishing instantly and reappearing directly behind Netero in mid-air. Shh! Crash! Sub-ability. The Broom of the Wrath Angel. Downward Crush. Jinkai Da Dust Strike. I conjured the heavy metallic broom in mid-air, flooding it with raw enhancement, and slammed it down with 2 hands like a giant meteor. Phase 3. The Golden Guanyin. Flash! For a fraction of a second, the entire dojo turned into a sea of blinding golden light. Behind Netero, the colossal 1,000-armed manifestation of the 100-type Guanjin Bodhisattva flickered into reality. It wasn't a full summon. Netero only used a single fluid hand motion of the first palm. Impact! Boom! The giant golden palm struck downward. The collision between my downward crush and Netero's first palm sounded like a mountain collapsing. The shockwave blew out every observation window in the dojo, shattering the tungsten granite floor into thousands of floating stone fragments. My Soul Vanguard constructs were shattered back into raw aura instantly. My Aegis of the Faithful golden armor flared to maximum density, absorbing the staggering kinetic impact, but the sheer, overwhelming velocity drove me straight down into the crater. The verdict: where Ren stands. The dust slowly settled. I stood in the center of a 20-foot crater, leaning slightly on the shaft of the Broom of the Wrath Angel, breathing heavily as my golden-green aura stabilized. My shirt was torn and blood trickled from the corner of my mouth, but my internal organs were intact, saved completely by Aegis of the Faithful and my post-mortem engine. Netero stood on the rim of the crater, his Geta clogs completely untouched by dust, his hands tucked casually into his wooden sleeves. Ho ho ho! Netero laughed heartily, nodding with genuine admiration. Incredible! To take a direct hit from my Guanyin and remain standing with 0 broken bones. You really are something else, Ren. Kale walked to the edge of the crater, looking down at me with a rare smirk. So, what's the verdict, Chairman? Netero stroked his long white beard, his sharp eyes evaluating my entire combat profile. Official battle analysis and results. Outcome, technique, speed, victory, survival and evaluation. Did you win? No. Netero's 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva operates on a speed tier that bypasses normal Nen perception. No hunter alive could beat him in a straight duel in 1991. Did you draw? No, but you achieved something almost nobody else could. You survived a direct, full-contact strike from Netero without being incapacitated. Did you prove your stats? Absolute yes. Ren's master profile post-Netero spar, late 1991, parameter, ratings, status, details, age, date, 19 years old, born 1972, peak physical growth, 6.1, high stamina, reflexes, Nen category, specialist masterclass, and the Sacred Wayfarer harmonizes all 5 categories into 100% equilibrium. Defense rating, S rank, absolute. Aegis of the Faithful post-mortem engine can stop Silva Zoldyck and withstand Netero's first palm. Speed, mobility, A rank, high sonic. Thread of Unbroken Will allows instant slingshot movement and mid-air trajectory shifts. Versatility, S rank, max. Portals, Sanctuary Waypoint, Homing Emission, Autonomous Guardians, Soul Vanguard, and Brute Force, Wrath Angel. Secret Engine, dual post-mortem operating deep in the soul, provides infinite aura recovery in high-stress states at the end of the road. Meta-knowledge, 100% intact, remains a complete secret from Netero, Kale, and the entire association. Netero jumped down into the crater, clapping a heavy hand onto my shoulder. In terms of raw versatility and defensive density, you're already in the top 5 hunters under 30 years old in the entire association, Netero said, his eyes glowing with genuine pride. Keep refining that specialist Hatsu of yours. When 1996 comes around, the world is going to need men like you. I wiped the blood from my chin, letting the Broom of the Wrath Angel dissolve back into my aura with a satisfied smirk. Thanks for the lesson, Chairman, I said softly. The baseline was established. My stats were proven. The road to York New was wide open. Chapter 116, The Whispers of the Forbidden Land. Date, October 24th, 1991. Location, Zero Ground Dojo, Hunter Association Headquarters. The dust from Netero's first palm was still clearing, settling over the shattered granite floor of the private dojo. As my golden-green aura receded into a quiet hum beneath my linen shirt, Netero reached into his wooden sleeve, pulling out a small bamboo pipe and lighting it with a sharp, casual flick of his thumb. "A fine warm-up," Netero murmured, blowing a thin ring of gray smoke toward the cracked ceiling. "Now then, since you've proven your bones won't snap under real pressure, I have an off-the-books assignment for you." Ren, I adjusted my dark coat and brushed off my shoulders. Beside me, Kale took a step closer, his eyes narrowing slightly as he picked up the sudden shift in the old man's tone. "Off the books?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Does this come from the V5, or directly from you, Chairman?" "Strictly from me," Netero smirked, his eyes narrowing into sharp, dark slits. "I need someone with top-tier stealth, spatial mobility, and absolute discretion to slip into the Kaken Empire. My personal intel network indicates their Royal Military Research Division is secretly developing naval hull technology and colossal spatial engines. Blueprints meant for a vessel beyond anything the known world has ever constructed." Internal monologue. The meta-knowledge. My mind raced behind an unreadable, stone-cold expression. The Black Whale won. My reincarnated memories immediately pulled up the classified future history of the Hunter x Hunter universe. Kakin's rapid technological leap wasn't just a random military expansion. It was the groundwork for the gigantic, multi-layered colony ship that Nasubi Hui Guo Ru would build decades later. The very vessel beyond Netero, Isaac's secret son, would eventually use to break the V5's treaty and sail straight toward the Mobius Lake. He's already tracking the preliminary research for the expedition, I thought, suppressing the slightest tremor in my heart. Netero suspects Kakin is preparing for the voyage long before they ever declare themselves a sovereign superpower. I looked back at the chairman, playing the part of a curious 19-year-old double-star hunter. "A massive vessel?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "What kind of voyage requires technology that big? Are they planning an invasion across the ocean?" "Invasion? Ho-ho. Nothing so small-minded," Netero chuckled, though there was zero humor in his eyes. "They are building a ship designed to cross the boundary, technology meant to journey to the Forbidden Land." "The secret of the Dark Continent. Forbidden, huh?" I asked quietly, crossing my arms. Netero took another slow puff from his pipe, looking up at the high ceiling of the ruined dojo. "There are secrets in this world that only a tiny, segmented circle of people are ever allowed to know," Netero said softly, his voice echoing off the stone walls with a heavy, ancient weight. "Boundaries drawn by global treaties, guarded by monsters and calamity. Places where the map simply ends. The Dark Continent," my mind supplied instantly. I knew the truth that Netero carried in silence. The old man had already journeyed to that vast, horrifying hellscape twice in his youth, alongside Zig Zoldyck and Lina Horstduve. He knew firsthand the absolute nightmare of the 5 great calamities: Brionne, Hellbell, Pap, I, and the Zobai virus. He knew human ambition meant nothing against the sheer scale of the outside world, which was precisely why he had signed the treaty banning all expeditions during his tenure as chairman. "If Kakin breaks that taboo," Netero continued, tapping his pipe against his clog to clear the ash, "the balance of the entire world shifts. I need you and Kale to map out their research facilities, identify their head engineers, and bring back copies of their metallurgical schematics. Do not engage, do not leave aura signatures, and do not let the Kaken Royal Guard know the association is watching." "Understood," I nodded smoothly, making a mental note to store any retrieved blueprints inside the resting horizon for safekeeping. "We'll set up a covert portal network in Kaken within the month." Kale tipped his hat slightly, a subtle glint of ambition in his eyes. "Undercover infiltration into an authoritarian empire's military-industrial sector. Just another Tuesday for us, Chairman." Netero laughed heartily, waving his hand to dismiss us. "Good. Don't get caught, boys. If you get captured, I'll publicly deny ever knowing your names." As we walked out of the Zero Ground Dojo into the quiet corridors of Hunter HQ, I kept my thoughts locked deep within the vault of my soul. The pieces of the grand board were aligning far faster than I had anticipated, and my secret knowledge was keeping me 3 steps ahead of everyone, even the chairman himself. Chapter 1 and 17. Lone Ghost in the Shadows of Kakin. Date, November 15th, 1991. Location, Underground Naval Facility 09, Kakin Empire. The air deep beneath Kakin's northern coast tasted of sulfur, industrial grease, and raw steel. 3 weeks after Netero assigned me the off-the-books mission, I stood alone on a dark, steel-girded catwalk suspended hundreds of feet above a subterranean dry dock. Kale was handling association logistics back at headquarters, leaving this delicate spy operation entirely on my shoulders. Below me lay a colossal, whale-shaped superstructure, the early structural hull testing for what would eventually become the Black Whale 1. Look at those dimensions, I muttered under my breath, keeping my Zetsu completely seamless. That isn't a ship for commercial trade or naval patrol. That's a floating city. Solo infiltration protocol. The security was brutal. Armed Kakin Royal Guards equipped with heavy anti-Nen armor patrolled every corridor, supplemented by automated thermal sensors and aura-detecting tripwires. But for a solo specialist operating without a partner to slow down or compromise, the facility was a playground. Swoosh, swoosh. I touched the flat steel surface of the support beam beside me. The Sacred Wayfarer, Sanctuary Waypoint, Sinaru Michishrubi. A tiny, invisible doorway marker formed beneath my palm, creating a direct anchor to the resting horizon. Anchor set, I thought smoothly. If the alarm triggers, I step straight into the pocket dimension. 0 delay, 0 witnesses. The solo extraction, using the thread of unbroken will, I transmuted 3 razor-thin aura tendrils upward, latching onto the ceiling beams. I pulled myself across the cavernous roof at silent, extreme speeds, bypassing the floor patrols entirely. I dropped soundlessly onto the upper balcony of the central command suite, where top military engineers were reviewing classified schematics. Inside, 2 Kakin Nen guards stood alert, their Gyo active as they scanned the room. But my golden-green specialist aura remained sealed deep within my body. Before either guard could register the sudden shift in air pressure, I flicked my wrists. The Sacred Wayfarer, thread of unbroken will. The steel-hardened tendrils whipped forward, wrapping around their throats and pinning them silently against the wall before they could draw breath or hit the alarm. Within seconds, both guards passed out cold from oxygen deprivation. I moved to the central server and physical archive, plugging in an encrypted association drive while opening the safe to pull out 2 thick binders of classified schematics. Project Mobius, high-density hull metallurgy and spatial engines. I deposited the physical documents directly inside the resting horizon, storing them safely away in my conjured pocket dimension. Within 30 minutes, the drive finished copying the master server files. I slipped out through the high balcony windows without leaving a single casualty or a signature or physical footprint behind. Netero now had his complete intel, and my secret meta-knowledge of Kakin's true long-term goal remained completely safe. 5 months. What was supposed to be a surgical extraction of blueprints turned into a long, grinding campaign of urban espionage deep within Kakin's central military province. The security in the capital wasn't just strict, it was paranoid. High-ranking Kakin officers and elite Nen-using royal guards patrolled key research sectors around the clock. More than once, I found myself in razor-thin close-quarters engagements against officers whose aura density made them formidable combatants. Tap, 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 swoosh! Intruder in Sector 4. Seal the blast doors. I slipped through the shadows of a grand archive corridor, my Zetsu holding my golden-green aura down to an undetectable whisper. When a squad of high-ranking guards rounded the corner, aura flaring from their bayonets, I didn't engage. I simply touched the cold marble wall. The Sacred Wayfarer, Sanctuary Waypoint, Seinaru Mishirube. A door marker flickered into existence for a microsecond. I stepped sideways into the resting horizon, letting the portal snap shut behind me. Outside, the guards rushed past the empty hall, playing a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek against a ghost they couldn't touch. Sitting safely inside the quiet, peaceful expanse of my conjured pocket dimension, I unbuttoned my leather coat and reached into my inner pocket, pulling out a heavy, leather-bound volume I had recovered from the private vault of Kakin's head archivist. The East Edition. My fingers traced the faded golden lettering on the weathered leather cover. Journey to the New World. East. Author Don Fries. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened the first page. As an Isekai traveler who possessed absolute foresight of the Hunter x Hunter universe, I recognized this book instantly. It was the legendary 3-century-old travelogue written by Don Fries, detailing the flora, fauna, and geography of the shoreline of the Dark Continent. Kakin's royal family had locked the East volume away in secret, using its survival guides and environmental records as the foundational Bible for their upcoming expedition. They don't just have the ship blueprints, I thought, running my thumb over Don Fries's handwritten script. They have the map. I carefully placed the priceless relic onto a wooden shelf inside the resting horizon, securing it alongside our star iron samples and black whale schematics. Ghost of the past. Leaning back against the conjured stone wall of my sanctuary, the silence of the pocket dimension allowed memories from 1981 to surface, fragments of the original Ren's childhood before I woke up in his body. In the bleak, poverty-stricken days before Kale picked me up, the original Ren had an older brother. I remembered his rough, dirt-streaked face and the worn canvas bag he carried the morning he left. He had taken a contract with a recruiter promising high wages in Kakin's Northern Iron mines and never came back. No letters. No money sent home. Nothing. What happened to him? I wondered, looking at my hands that now held the power to shatter granite and manipulate spatial dimensions. Did he collapse in a dark, toxic mine shaft 10 years ago, buried in an unmarked grave beneath Kakin's soil? Did he survive, claw his way up through the criminal underworld, or join one of Kakin's mafia families? Or did he simply move on, forgetting the little brother he left behind in the slums? A cold, calm exhale left my lips as I stood up, adjusting my coat. I wasn't the weak, helpless kid waiting by the roadside anymore. Whether he was dead, alive, good, or bad, the answer lay somewhere out there in the sprawling empire of Kakin. But right now, the mission came first. I touched the exit marker, stepping back out into the dimly lit corridors of the archive to finish what Netero started. Chapter 18, Ghosts of Sector 7, revised. Date April 12th, 1992, location, Abandoned Iron Mine No. 4, Northern Border District, Kakin Empire. Before closing out the 5-month infiltration and delivering the Black Whale blueprints and Don Freaks' manuscript to Netero, there was one personal debt I had to settle. The memory fragment from 1981 was faint but distinct. An older brother's calloused hand, a thick wool mantle, and a promise to send money back to Oakhaven, our tiny, snow-draped home village nestled beneath towering pine ridges that never materialized. The northern border district of Kakin was a desolate wasteland of rusted iron scaffolding, sulfur pits, and hollowed-out stone mountains. Mine No. 4 had been officially condemned by the Kakin Labor Bureau 6 years ago following a massive structural cave-in. I stood at the dark entrance of the subterranean tunnel, my coat snapping in the freezing mountain wind. Maintaining a soft, low-output 1010, I stepped into the pitch-black darkness of the shaft. The paper trail in the dark deep within the mountain's third level lay the old administrative office, a stone bunker half buried in collapsed rock and decades of dust. Creak. I pushed open the rusted iron door. Inside, rows of moldering filing cabinets lined the walls, filled with forgotten worker ledgers from the early 1980s. The sacred wayfarer, beacon of the unwavering. I condensed a tiny, radiant orb of golden-green aura above my palm. The soft, warm light illuminated the room, revealing centuries of accumulated dust and dead vermin. I spent 2 hours sifting through damp, yellowed logbooks, scanning thousands of names recorded in sloppy ink. Laborers imported from remote provincial towns, migrant workers, mountain woodsmen. Names discarded by the state the moment they stopped swinging a pickaxe. Then my eyes stopped. Logbook 1981, Section C, Contract Laborers. Name, Elias Origin, Oakhaven Village. Status, assigned to Deep Tunnel 12, Iron Quartz Vein. I turned the page. The entries for late 1981 were sparse, but the brutal reality of Kakin's industrial expansion was written plain in red wax stamps across the ledger. Incident Report. Nov 14th, 1981. Methane pocket detonation at level 4. Shaft collapsed. 142 unregistered laborers trapped. Action taken. Shaft sealed by order of overseer to prevent tunnel fire from spreading to central iron veins. 0 rescue operations conducted. The burial site I walked down to level 4. The corridor ended abruptly at a massive wall of fallen granite and twisted iron beams. The sealed entrance to Shaft 12. For 11 years, 142 men had remained buried behind thousands of tons of dead rock, forgotten by the Empire. I stood before the stone wall, looking at the cracked rock face where Elias's life had ended back when I was just a 9-year-old kid shivering in the snowy pine woods of Oakhaven before Kale found me. "So, you didn't abandon me," I said quietly, my voice echoing off the damp tunnel walls. "You just never made it home." I raised my right hand, touching the cold granite face, the sacred wayfarer, beacon of the unwavering. Instead of a destructive shockwave, I channeled a gentle, sustained pulse of golden-green aura into the mountain wall, a quiet, solemn beacon illuminating the dark tomb behind the rock, offering a final moment of warmth and peace to the spirits trapped inside. Chapter 180.5, The Broken Pocket Watch. Date, April 14th, 1992. Location, Slum District, Northern Border Town, Kakin Empire. Before boarding the night airship out of Kakin, I made one last stop in the dilapidated tent city that sat 2 miles outside abandoned mine number 4. It was where the families and retired overseers of the mine workers used to stay. I was looking for an old retired foreman whose name I had spotted in the administrative margins of the 1981 logbook. Gideon. I found him sitting outside a crumbling wooden shanty, his hands scarred from decades of stone breaking, and his lungs wheezing from coal dust. "Gideon?" I asked softly, stepping into the dim alleyway. The old man squinted up at me through cataract-clouded eyes. "If you're here from the Labor Bureau, there's nothing left to take, boy?" "I'm not from the Bureau," I said, reaching into my coat and pulling out a pouch of heavy gold coins. A tiny fraction of my hunter funds. I placed it gently on the wooden crate beside him. "I just want to know about a kid who joined Deep Tunnel 12 back in late '81. His name was Elias." The story of Elias. The old man froze at the name. He looked at the gold pouch, then up at my face, staring closely at my eyes and jawline. "Elias?" Gideon breathed out a cloud of gray pipe smoke, his eyes drifting back toward the dark, snow-dusted peaks in the distance. "Yeah, I remember Elias. Tough kid. Couldn't have been more than 16 when he arrived on the timber transport truck down from Oakhaven." Gideon tapped his wooden pipe against his stool, settling into the memory. "Most of the young lads who came down from the northern mountain villages were broken by the dark within 2 weeks," Gideon said softly. "They spent their pay on gamble den cards or cheap liquor to forget the cold. But not Elias. He didn't drink. He didn't gamble. He worked double shifts in the high-risk iron quartz veins where the methane leaked." "Why?" I asked, my voice flat and quiet. "He was saving every single brass coin," Gideon chuckled sadly. "He had this beat-up silver pocket watch he bought off a dead trader. The glass was cracked and the hands didn't turn anymore, but he kept a tiny folded photograph tucked inside the casing." Gideon looked up at me, his weathered face softening. "He used to show it to me by the lantern light during the shift breaks. It was a picture of a little boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing in front of a snow-covered wooden cabin surrounded by giant pine trees in Oakhaven. Elias told me, once I hit 500,000 Jenny, I'm heading back up the mountain to get my little brother Ren. I'm going to rebuild our family's cottage so the winter frost doesn't leak through the floorboards anymore." The last envelope, Gideon reached into his worn coat pocket, pulling out a small, dirt-caked tin box. He opened it with trembling, callus-covered fingers and pulled out a faded, water-stained paper envelope sealed with red wax. "3 days before the cave-in on November 14th, Gideon whispered, holding out the envelope to me, "Elias reached 400,000 Jenny. He handed this to a courier heading up toward the northern forestry post. But the courier got stranded in a winter blizzard, and the mail sat in a lost-and-found locker in Sector 7 for 10 years until I bought a crate of scrap paper last winter." I took the envelope. The handwriting on the front was rough and uneven, the clumsy lettering of a mountain village kid trying his hardest to write clearly. "To Ren, the Timber Cottage, Oakhaven Village. Keep the wood stove burning. I'm almost done." Inside the envelope wasn't just a letter. Tucked beneath the yellowed paper was the old, cracked silver pocket watch, and 400,000 jenny in high-denomination cocking banknotes. A quiet farewell. I stood in the alleyway as the cold mountain wind blew through the tents, holding Elias's watch in the palm of my hand. He hadn't forgotten. He hadn't abandoned Ren in that remote, snow-bound village. He had worked himself to the bone in the darkest, most dangerous hole in the Kaken Empire, counting down every single coin until the mountain took him. I closed my fingers over the silver watch. The Sacred Wayfarer Sanctuary Waypoint, Seinaru Mishirub. I opened a small, silent portal to the resting horizon, carefully placing Elias's pocket watch and letter onto the highest wooden shelf inside my conjured sanctuary, right next to Don Fries's manuscript and our star iron samples. I turned back to Gideon, placing a second heavy pouch of gold on his crate. "Thank you, Gideon," I said smoothly. "You gave him a voice." "You look just like him, kid," the old man called out as I stepped into the shadows. "He would have been proud of how tall you grew." I didn't answer. I just pulled my dark color up against the wind and walked toward the airship station. The past was fully settled. Elias was at peace, and his memory was locked safely inside my sanctuary forever. Revised Canon, Chapter 118 and 108.5. Home Village, Oakhaven, remote, snowy mountain village surrounded by pine trees. Ren's brother, Elias, 16 years old in 1981. Elias's goal: earn 500,000 jenny in the Kaken mines to fix up their wooden timber cottage in Oakhaven so Ren wouldn't freeze in winter. Relic recovered. Elias's cracked silver pocket watch, letter, and saved funds. Status: origin fixed. Narrative ready for the 1996 York New Arc. Here's the updated master ledger for your character profile, abilities, status, age, and complete financial standing as of mid-1992, post-Kaken mission. Master profile: Ren, age 19 years old, born late 1972. Status: 2-star hunter, specialist combatant, and master blacksmith. Origin: Oakhaven, a remote, snowbound mountain village surrounded by dense pine forests. Secret engine, top secret. Dual post-mortem resonance engine running silently within the vault of your soul, providing infinite aura recovery and ultra-dense willpower after Krollo stole your original Hatsu. 100% secret from everyone, including Kale and Netero. Meta-knowledge, 100% absolute foresight regarding the Phantom Troop, Hisoka, Zoldix, Greed Island, and the Dark Continent. Complete Nen profile. The Sacred Wayfarer, Nen category, specialist, primary function, harmonizes all 5 basic Nen categories into 100% equilibrium, fueled by the dual postmortem engine. 6 core disciplines. 1. Enhancement, to protect. Aegis of the Faithful. Ultra-dense golden aura layer that dynamically hardens proportional to enemy lethal intent. Blocked Silva Zoldic's claw, absorbed Netero's first palm. 2. Transmutation, to carry on. Thread of unbroken will, ribbon-like tendrils with elastic and steel-like properties for extreme mobility, pulling yourself across terrain, and silent precision cuts. 3. Conjuration, to keep going. Sanctuary Waypoint, creates portal markers on flat surfaces to the resting horizon, a conjured pocket dimension used for instant travel, safe storage, and refuge. 4. Emission, to believe. Beacon of the Unwavering, fires homing star-shaped projectiles that detonate with massive kinetic force, reveal hidden trap/Nen constructs, and boost team morale. 5. Manipulation, to devote. Soul Vanguard, 2 fully autonomous aura armor constructs. Frontline attackers, intercepting defender, representing the 2 post-mortem souls, requires 0 mental focus. 6. Specialization, to hope. At the end of the road, peak state triggering during critical moments, fuses all 5 types, continuously heals wounds, refills aura, and doubles overall combat output. Sub-ability, the Broom of the Wrath Angel, Fundo no Tenshi no Hoki. Nen category, Conjuration Enhancement. Mechanism, conjures a heavy-duty broom made of dense metallic fibers, flooded with massive shu and raw enhancement, hits like a giant warhammer. The Great Sweep, Osuji, Grand Cleansing, huge horizontal kinetic waves sweeping away enemy defenses and terrain. Downward Crush, Jinkaida, Dust Strike, overhead 2-handed slam, concentrating enhancement to crush high-level Nen defenses. Ken, current wealth and financial ledger, 1992. Even after funding the Aegis Anvil project and constructing your state-of-the-art master forging workshop, complete with custom star iron anvils, high-temp Nen furnaces, and specialized smithing tools, your financial standing remains staggering. Financial Ledger 1992. Liquid Hunter Funds. 4.8 billion Jenny, earned from S-rank Hunter missions, Padokia Ruins Expedition, and Syndicate bounties. Raw assets and material. 2 tons of refined star iron, harvested from Padokia Ruins. Estimated market value, 15 billion Jenny, priceless metallurgical asset. Relics in storage. 1 Don Frietz's Journey to the New World East, stored in Resting 2. Complete Black Whale 1 hull and engine blueprints horizon. 3 Elias's cracked silver pocket watch and saved 400 zeros in Jenny. Infrastructure. The Aegis Anvil Workshop, fully paid for and operational. Here is the complete overview of your basic Nen fundamentals and advanced Nen techniques, reflecting your level as a Master Specialist Combatant and Double Star Hunter as of 1992. Basic Nen fundamentals, the 4 major principles. Stahang. Because your primary Hatsu, the Sacred Wayfarer, operates by harmonizing all 5 basic categories at 100% equilibrium, your mastery over the fundamental principles is refined to textbook perfection. 10. Infold. Mastery level, absolute. Details. Your aura flow is smooth, motionless, and exceptionally quiet. In passive states, it sits close to your skin like a layer of warm silk, preventing energy leak and naturally slowing your physical aging. Zetsu. Suppress. Mastery level, ghost tier. Details. You can completely shut off your aura nodes instantly. Combined with your childhood training in the silent pine forests of Oakhaven and your covert ops experience in Kakin, your Zetsu makes you virtually untraceable to thermal sensors, electronic Nen meters, and standard Geo scans. Ren. Refine. Mastery level, colossal pool. Details. When you unseal your aura, your golden green light flares with immense density. Powered by the secret dual postmortem resonance engine, your Ren can output explosive aura pressure for hours without fatigue or exhaustion. Hatsu, release. Mastery level, specialist mastery. Details, your personal expression of Nen, the Sacred Wayfarer, and its sub-ability, the Broom of the Wrath Angel, allowing you to seamlessly blend enhancement, transmutation, conjuration, emission, and manipulation simultaneously. Advanced Nen techniques, Yonga. Your combat style combines high-speed mobility, impenetrable defense, and silent execution. Here is how you utilize the advanced applications in real combat. Technique, mastery level, combat application and persona usage, Gyo, focus, instantaneous, concentrating aura to your eyes to spot hidden Dale. In constructs, traps, or spatial anomalies. You can maintain passive Gyo during high-speed combat without dropping defense. In concealment, master. Hiding the aura of your thread of unbroken will tendrils and sanctuary waypoint door markers. Allows you to set spatial traps or launch surprise attacks that enemies cannot see unless they use focused Geo. N. Circle. Radius 45 meters. Your N manifests as a quiet, spherical pulse of golden green aura. While not as vast as Zoldyck-level masters, e.g. Xeno's 300 meters, your 45-meter radius is razor-sharp, capable of sensing structural weaknesses, invisible Nen constructs, and micro-vibrations in air pressure. Shu. Enfold object. Master blacksmith tier. Flooding objects with aura. Used continuously in your blacksmithing at the Aegis Anvil to temper star iron. In battle, it is the core mechanism behind the Broom of the Wrath Angel, turning a metallic sweeping tool into a warhammer that crushes Ken. Ko, absolute focus. Lethal. Concentrating 100% of your aura into a single point, fist, broom tip, or tendril needle, using Zetsu, Ten, Ren, and Gyo simultaneously. Leaves the rest of your body defenseless, but delivers one-hit execution power. Ken, fortify. High efficiency. Maintaining a 70-30 defensive aura shroud across your entire body for prolonged combat. Your Aegis of the Faithful builds directly on top of your Ken, making your base defense almost impervious to standard physical attacks. Ryu, flow control. Flawless, microsecond adjustments. The real-time dynamic shifting of aura percentages across your body, e.g. shifting from 80% offense in your strike to 80% defense in your chest mid-swing. Your Ryu is so fluid that even elite combatants like Silva Zoldyck and Chairman Netero commended your balance. Advanced Nen Matrix Record. Combat Class. Master Tier Specialist, Dual Engine Combatant. Base Defense, Ken Aegis of the Faithful, High S Rank. Perception, 45-meter High Density on plus Passive Microjo. Shoe Efficiency, Master Blacksmith Grade, Star Iron Tempering Level. Flow Control U, Microsecond Precision, validated versus Netero. Chapter 119, The Debriefing. Date, May 10th, 1992. Location, Chairman's Office, Hunter Association Headquarters. After 2 solid weeks of rest in the quiet pine air of my private workshop, the exhaustion of the 5-month Cockeen infiltration had finally cleared from my bones. My golden-green aura flowed smoothly once more, silent and dense beneath my dark coat. I stood before Netero's heavy mahogany desk. The old chairman sat in his high-backed chair, sipping green tea while looking out over the cityscape through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "You look well rested, Ren," Netero murmured, setting his teacup down with a soft click. "No lingering fatigue from Kakin?" "None, Chairman," I replied evenly. "I'm back at 100%. I reached into my coat and touched the air in front of me, opening a brief, silent rift to the resting horizon. The Sacred Wayfarer, Sanctuary Waypoint. I pulled out 2 thick leather binders of stolen metallurgical schematics, along with a heavy, weathered volume bound in cracked brown leather, placing them gently onto his desk. The revelation. "The schematics you asked for," I began, my voice cold and focused. "What Kakin is building down in those subterranean dry docks isn't a warship. It's the Black Whale, a colossal 5-deck floating colony ship. They've already mastered the high-density hull alloy and preliminary spatial engine prototypes. Kakin isn't preparing for a regional war. They are preparing to cross the boundary into the Dark Continent." Netero's eyes narrowed slightly, the playful air around him instantly vanishing. I tapped the heavy leather-bound book lying between us. "I know this because I pulled this from the private archive of Kakin's head researcher," I continued, watching his expression closely. "It's Journey to the New World, East Edition, written by Don Freaks 300 years ago. Kakin is using his survival guides and shoreline maps as the foundational Bible for their expedition." Netero reached out, his calloused fingers gently tracing the faded golden lettering on the ancient cover. "Don's book." Netero breathed, a rare glint of nostalgia and grim solemnity passing through his dark eyes. "To think they managed to secure the East volume." "I suggest you hand this book over to Ging," I said calmly. "He's the only hunter in the association with the historical knowledge, linguistic skill, and obsessive drive to translate and make full use of Don's records." Netero chuckled softly under his breath, nodding. "Ho-ho? Ging, is it? Yes, that crazy kid would probably jump out of a moving airship if he knew this was sitting on my desk." Shadows of the future. I leaned slightly forward, resting my palms on the edge of the desk. "And there's one more thing, Chairman," I said, dropping my voice to a quiet whisper. "The rumors circulating within Kakin's Black Ops leadership, the man slated to lead this expedition once the Black Whale is built, goes by the name of Beyond." Netero froze. The tea in his cup didn't ripple. The air pressure inside the office dropped several degrees in a fraction of a second as his aura subtly flared, and then settled back into complete stillness. "Beyond," Netero repeated quietly, a deep, unreadable expression settling onto his face. "Though, it's likely he'll only make his move after your death, Chairman." Netero stared at me for a long, silent moment. The silence stretched between us, heavy and thick, before the old man suddenly burst into a hearty, mischievous laugh that echoed off the glass windows. "Ho, ho, ho!" Netero slapped his knee, his eyes gleaming with dark, wicked amusement. "After my death, you say? Then maybe I should record a video message for the Zodiacs. Something simple. If someone claiming to be my son appears in public after I'm dead, hunt him down and kill him! Ho, ho, ho!" I didn't laugh. I kept my eyes locked onto his, playing my hand with absolute precision. "And Chairman," I asked softly, my voice cutting cleanly through his laughter, "you've already been to the Dark Continent yourself, haven't you?" The silent acknowledgement. Netero's laughter slowly tapered off into a faint, lingering smile. He leaned back in his chair, picking up his teacup once more, looking out at the sky. "The world outside is vast, Ren," Netero murmured, his voice sounding older than usual, carrying the weight of a man who had walked into the endless black hellscape of the Mobius Lake and returned alive. A place where human strength isn't tested against other men, but against sheer, terrifying nature. There is no victory there, only survival. He looked back at me, his sharp eyes evaluating every inch of my posture. "You've done an exceptional job, Double Star Hunter," Netero said, sweeping the schematics and Don's book into his drawer. Take your pay, finish your work at the Aegis Anvil, and refine that specialist aura of yours. The storm is coming, but for now the board belongs to the 90s. I bowed my head respectfully, stepped backward into a silent portal to the resting horizon, and vanished from the office without leaving a trace. Chapter 120, Reunion in the Vault. Date, June 18th, 1992. Location, Underground Vault 04, Hunter Association HQ, sublevels. The air 40 meters beneath Hunter headquarters was thick with the familiar scent of ozone and dry stone. Netero had summoned me down under the guise of a restricted inventory audit, but when I stepped into the dimly lit stone chamber, I wasn't surprised to see the figure leaning lazily against a reinforced steel pillar. He wore the same frayed cloth wrappings, stained, turban-style scarf, and worn leather boots he'd worn back when we first crossed paths. Ging Freaks, my former mentor. The man who had dragged me through hellish wilderness survival drills back in 1984 when I was 12 years old, and the same bastard who had looked me in the eyes in 1989 after Krollo stole my original Hatsu, giving me the cryptic push I needed to look inward and ignite my dual postmortem resonance engine. Ging pulled his pinky out of his ear and looked up. His dark eyes flicked over my 6'1" frame, taking in the calm, motionless flow of my golden green 10. A familiar crooked grin spread across his scruffy face. "Look at you," Ging rasped, shaking his head with a quiet chuckle. "Standing tall, aura sealed tight as a drum. Guess that advice back in '89 didn't go to waste, huh, kid?" "I survived, Jing," I replied with a faint smirk, keeping my hands in my dark coat pockets. "No thanks to your cryptic phrasing back then. Hey, if I gave you the answer on a silver platter, you wouldn't have built something this terrifying," Ging snorted. "I believe this belongs to your lineage," Netero interrupted smoothly, stepping out from the shadows and producing the heavy, weathered volume bound in cracked leather. Journey to the New World, East Edition. The master and the student Ging's lazy posture vanished. His eyes widened, and before Netero could even present the book properly, Ging's hand blurred with terrifying speed, bypassing raw distance with a fluid, effortless burst of Ryu, and snatched the journal out of the chairman's grip. Ging flipped open the cover, his calloused fingers carefully hovering over the handwritten script without touching the 300-year-old ink. "I'll be damned," Ging muttered softly, a genuine, reverent smile breaking across his face. "It really is the East Edition, Don's original notes on the Mobius shoreline." He looked up at me, his eyes burning with intense pride and curiosity. 5 months inside Kakin's military research sector, Ging said, leaning his shoulder against the pillar. "I heard rumors someone pulled off a phantom heist, but I should have known it was you. How'd you bypass their spatial alarms? A spatial portal, razor-thin Zetsu, and applying the baseline stealth principles you beat into me back in '84, I said calmly. "Netero and I agreed you're the only one alive who can translate Don's shorthand anyway." Ging laughed heartily, carefully tucking the ancient journal inside his tunic. "Damn right. The V5 and Kakin think this is just a resource map. They can't read half of Don's dialect." A quiet understanding, Ging took 2 steps toward me, clapping a heavy, calloused hand onto my shoulder. The sheer density of his latent aura thrummed beneath his palm, but my Aegis of the Faithful remained completely steady beneath my skin. "You've come a long way since Oakhaven, Ren," Ging said, his voice dropping to a serious, low tone. "You rebuilt your nodes, harmonized 5 categories, and pulled off an S-rank extraction against an empire. I don't need to ask what kind of engine you're running in that soul of yours anymore. Your eyes tell me everything." "I'm keeping my edge," I said softly. "Good," Ging grinned, clapping my shoulder once more before turning toward the vault's heavy iron exit. "Because when Kakin finally finishes that floating city of theirs, the boundary is going to break. Keep refining that forge of yours." He stopped at the door, looking back over his shoulder with that signature, wicked glint in his eyes. "Don't die before 1996, kid. The world's about to get real interesting." With a casual wave of his hand, Ging slipped out into the corridor, his footsteps making 0 sound against the concrete floor. The final step. Netero chuckled softly, stroking his long white beard as the vault door clicked shut behind Ging. "Ho ho ho! He still acts like a proud big brother, doesn't he?" Netero murmured. "More like an obnoxious uncle," I smirked, adjusting my coat collar. "I'm heading back to the Aegis Anvil." Indeed, Netero nodded, his eyes turning solemn. Take the next 4 years. Forge your gear, refine your specialist Hatsu, and lock in your foundation. When September 1996 arrives in York New City, you'll need every ounce of that strength. I'll be ready, I said quietly. Chapter 121, The Secret of the Boundary. Date, June 18th, 1992. Location, Underground Vault Earl 4, Hunter Association HQ, Sublevels. Ging had barely been gone for 30 seconds when the atmosphere in the stone chamber shifted. Netero was still standing by the heavy vault door, his hands tucked loosely into his wooden sleeves, but the casual, amused twinkle in his eyes had evaporated, replaced by an ancient, suffocating weight. You asked me earlier if I had been to the Dark Continent, Ren, Netero said softly. His voice didn't echo. It seemed to absorb into the thick concrete walls. You want to know what lies beyond the Mobius Lake, don't you? What kind of hell exists out there? I adjusted my dark coat, keeping my posture balanced. Every hunter who learns the truth wants to know, Chairman. Ho ho. Fair enough, Netero chuckled, though there was zero warmth in it. He slowly unbuttoned his outer tunic, dropping it to the stone floor to reveal his classic white heart kanji training top. I'll tell you everything. Every monster, every calamity, and every mistake we made out there. He raised his right hand, making a simple open palm gesture. But first, we spar. An old man needs to blow off some steam after thinking about his past. Phase 1. High-speed exchange. I didn't hesitate. I knew Netero wasn't offering a friendly lesson like our duel in late 91. He needed a physical outlet for the dark memories the East Edition had dredged up. Boom! I unsealed the sacred wayfarer, erupting in a brilliant storm of golden-green aura. The dual post-mortem engine in my soul roared into full resonance, flooding my muscles with raw, refined power. Technique, Aegis of the Faithful plus Thread of Unbroken Will. I transmuted 4 steel-hardened aura tendrils into the vault ceiling and walls, slingshotting my 6-in-1 frame across the chamber at Mach 2 speed. Wrapped in the impenetrable defense of Aegis of the Faithful, I closed the gap in a microsecond, executing a lightning-fast co-strike aimed directly at Netero's chest. Clang! Netero didn't summon his Hatsu. Using pure, unadulterated Ryu and hand-to-hand mastery built over a century of martial excellence, his open palm intercepted my fist. The kinetic collision sent a shockwave blasting through the sub-level vault, spider-webbing the concrete floor beneath our Phase 2, unshackling the Bodhisattva. Faster, Ren! Netero barked, his sharp eyes flashing with fierce adrenaline. The things outside don't give you time to think. I shifted instantly. 1. Manipulation, Soul Vanguard. My 2 autonomous Aura Guardians materialized beside me, one wielding a heavy war lance, the other an interlocking shield, rushing Netero from both flanks. To emission, Beacon of the Unwavering, I unleashed 4 homing, star-shaped aura projectiles above his head, curving down to lock off his escape routes. 3. Sub-ability, the Broom of the Wrath Angel. I conjured the heavy metallic broom into my hands, flooding it with raw enhancement, and executed the Great Sweep, Dasaru, a massive horizontal kinetic wave designed to break high-level Ken. Flash! For a fraction of a second, the entire underground vault turned into a sea of blinding golden light. 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva. A gigantic, golden manifestation of the Bodhisattva flickered into existence behind Netero. 2 massive golden palms slammed together from the sides like a giant vice. Boom! The spatial pressure crushed my Soul Vanguard constructs back into raw aura instantly. The kinetic force caught my great sweep mid-swing, driving me straight back 30 yards across the vault floor. My boots carved deep trenches into the solid concrete before I slammed into the reinforced rear wall. The result, victory, loss, or draw. Dust and pulverized stone settled slowly in the dim light of the vault. I stood embedded 3 inches deep into the reinforced wall, leaning heavily on the shaft of the Broom of the Wrath Angel. My coat was shredded at the shoulders, and a thick streak of blood ran down my left temple. But Aegis of the Faithful had held, my bones were intact, and my post-mortem engine was already circulating golden aura to heal the tissue damage. Netero stood 30 paces away, his hands back inside his sleeves, breathing heavily. A faint, visible mark graced his left wooden clog, where the trailing edge of my Thread of Unbroken Will had managed to nick his footwear before the 3rd palm landed. Battle analysis and verdict. Outcome. Absolute strategic success. Did you win? No. Netero's 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva remains an unbeatable wall of absolute speed in a straight head-on duel. Did you draw? Physically, no, but in terms of aura endurance and survival, you pushed Netero further than any active hunter in the association could dream of in 1992. Did you prove your growth? Yes. You absorbed a direct third palm from the chairman and remained standing on your own 2 feet with 0 critical injuries. The tale of the 5 calamities. Netero jumped casually over the cracked floor, landing a few feet away with a faint, satisfied smile. Ho ho! Fine execution, Ren, Netero said, his voice returning to its normal calm tone as he wiped sweat from his brow. Your Aegis is truly remarkable. I didn't think anyone under 30 could take a third palm without losing a limb. I dissolved the broom of the Wrath Angel back into my aura, wiping the blood from my forehead with my sleeve. I'm all ears, Chairman. What's out there? Netero sat down cross-legged right on the cracked vault floor, staring into the dark corner of the room as memories from decades past resurfaced. There are no nations out there, Ren, Netero murmured, his voice heavy with ancient weight. No politics, no martial arts, and no glory. When Zig Zoldyck, Lin, and I crossed the shoreline, we didn't find opponents to fight. We found calamities. He held up 5 fingers. The 5 great calamities, Netero whispered. The orb-shaped weapon Brionne, the snake Hellbell that drives men to mutual slaughter, the human-keeping beast Pap, the gaseous life-form I that grants desires at catastrophic costs, and the Zobae virus, an immortal disease that strips away humanity. He looked up at me, his sharp eyes burning with quiet intensity. I realized then that human strength, the kind of strength I spent my entire life cultivating in the mountains, means nothing against the scale of the outside world. That is why I signed the treaty. That is why the boundary remains locked. Netero stood up, patting the dust off his trousers. Now you know, Double Star Hunter. Keep your secret, build your strength, and prepare yourself. The 90s won't stay quiet for long. I bowed my head silently, stepping backward into a portal to the resting horizon, leaving the chairman alone with his memories in the quiet vault. Chapter 122. The Geometry of Absolute Speed. Date, June 19th, 1992. Location, the Aegis Anvil Workshop, private residence. Wow! Even you in your prime couldn't conquer the Dark Continent, Chairman? I remembered asking him that right before stepping into the portal back at the vault. Netero hadn't answered with words. He had just offered a faint, melancholy smile that spoke louder than any textbook ever could. The outside world wasn't a mountain to climb or an opponent to beat. It was an environment that didn't care about human martial arts at all. Now, sitting cross-legged on the cold stone floor of my private workshop in the dead of night, the silence was broken only by the low, steady hum of the star iron forge in the corner. My shredded coat lay on a wooden bench beside me. The minor tissue damage from the third palm had completely healed, thanks to the dual post-mortem engine circulating golden aura through my body, but the phantom weight of Netero's speed still hung heavily in the room. I lost, I thought, staring down at my open palms. Even with 2 post-mortem engines running in my soul, even with my specialist harmonization and meta-knowledge, I lost cleanly. Deconstructing the Bodhisattva, I closed my eyes, running the sequence of the spar back in my mind at 1/10 speed, dissecting every microsecond. How could I win if it were a fight to the death? Netero's 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva wasn't invulnerable because of raw aura density. It was invincible because of speed and sequence. 1. The hand gesture, Netero praise, a motion born from decades of mountain training that bypasses standard human muscle response. 2. The manifestation, the golden statue appears instantly. 3. The palm strike. The strike hits faster than human perception or Nen deployment. In a standard head-on clash, I muttered to myself, opening my eyes as a faint golden-green thread of aura danced across my fingertips. Nobody beats him. Not Silva, not Zeno, not Krollo. Nobody. The tactical blueprint for death. If it had been a true life-or-death battle where 0 rules applied, winning wouldn't come from outpunching the Bodhisattva. It would require exploiting the fundamental mechanics of spatial geometry, stealth, and my unique specialist kit. 1. The range and spatial trap, sanctuary waypoint. Direct physical engagement within Netero's striking range is suicide. To win, I would have to pre-lay invisible portal markers, sanctuary waypoint, concealed with high-level Angelflurtampier and across the entire battlefield before the fight even starts. Number 2. Bypassing perception via delayed exit. The moment Netero initiates a prayer gesture, I wouldn't block with Aegis. I would step into the resting horizon, letting his palm strike hit empty air. By opening an exit marker directly behind or above Netero's blind spot while remaining inside the pocket dimension, I could bypass the Bodhisattva's forward reach entirely. Number 3. Lethal concentration versus unarmored targets. While the Guanyin is devastating, Netero's physical body, though forged like iron, is still human meat and bone. A single, unseen thread of unbroken will infused with 100% deployed from a concealed portal directly into his spine or throat would end the battle before the prayer gesture could complete its return arc. Number 4. At the end of the road, absolute overdrive. If pushed to the absolute brink, triggering my specialist capstone. At the end of the road, doubles overall output and fuses all 5 basic categories into total equilibrium, giving my Aegis enough density to anchor Netero's palms in place for a crucial fraction of a second, long enough to deliver a fatal strike. The realization I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a long, quiet breath as the furnace light flickered against the dark timber beams of the forge. Theory is cheap, I smirked softly to myself. The old man has 100 years of battle instincts. If I tried a spatial trick twice, he'd read the aura flow and swap me out of the air before my boot left the portal. I wasn't bitter about the loss. In fact, it gave me absolute clarity. I had tested my baseline against the single strongest human alive in 1992 and survived to analyze the results. I stood up, walking over to the anvil, where 2 tons of unrefined, glowing star iron sat waiting. It was time to stop testing and start forging. The 4-year window before York New City was officially open. Meanwhile, 30 miles away in the quiet, mahogany-lined sanctuary of Hunter Association headquarters, Chairman Netero sat on a woven tatami mat, nursing a fresh cup of steamy green tea. The sublevel vault had already been cordoned off by maintenance staff to repair the spiderwebbed floor and shattered concrete walls. Netero looked down at his left wooden clog, specifically at the paper-thin, microscopic nick carved into the outer rim of the cedar wood. He ran his thumb over the mark, a small, knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Ho ho," Netero murmured to the empty room, blowing a quiet stream of steam off his tea. "That boy." Netero's assessment of Ren. In a century of martial arts and decades as chairman, Netero had seen every conceivable manifestation of Nen. He had fought enhancers who could shatter mountains, transmuters with lethal toxins, and manipulators who could control armies. But Ren was a different specimen entirely. To harmonize all 5 basic categories at 100% equilibrium while maintaining that quiet, ironclad zetsu. Netero thought, his sharp eyes narrowing into dark slits. It shouldn't be possible. Even among specialists, an aura pool doesn't recover at that speed unless it's fueled by something ancient and relentless. Netero had felt the underlying rhythm during their exchange. Beneath Ren's golden-green aura lay an abnormal, dual-layered pulse, a silent engine that absorbed kinetic shock and converted it back into raw stamina. "He calls it Aegis," Netero whispered softly. "To absorb a direct third palm from my bodhisattva, stay on 2 feet, and have his tissue already mending before the dust settles. His defense isn't just heavy armor. It's a living barrier." Netero's mental simulation, a fight to the death. Netero set his teacup down, leaning back against the wooden pillar as his brilliant mind ran the hypothetical scenario. What if Ren hadn't been testing his strength? What if it had been a genuine, no-holds-barred assassination match to the death? A dark, exhilarated glint flashed across the old chairman's eyes. "He wouldn't have tried to swing that heavy broom at my palms a second time," Netero mused, stroking his white beard. "The kid is too sharp for that. He knows my statue's reach is absolute in a linear clash." Netero reconstructed how Ren would actually fight if his life depended on it. 1. The spatial trap. Ren wouldn't engage in the open. He would abuse his inn to hide sanctuary waypoint door markers all over the terrain, transforming the entire battlefield into an invisible minefield of spatial rifts. Number 2. The pocket dimension ambush. The moment Netero initiated a prayer gesture, Ren wouldn't try to block or dodge. He would step sideways into the resting horizon, letting the Bodhisattva's palms crush empty air. 3. The lethal blind spot strike. While Netero's forward momentum was locked in the striking arc, Ren would open an exit portal directly behind Netero's neck, driving a thread of unbroken will coated in 100% Ko straight into his brainstem, the chairman's verdict. Netero chuckled under his breath, taking another slow sip of tea. A terrifying strategy, Netero murmured softly, his smile widening. If I hesitated for even 100th of a second, if I let my guard drop or misread the aura flow from those portals, he really would put a hole through my throat. He looked out the window at the setting sun casting long, golden shadows across the city skyline. But experience is a cruel teacher, kid. Netero said to the quiet room, his eyes glinting with the absolute pride of the world's strongest martial artist. The moment a spatial portal opens behind me, my registers the displacement before your boot even touches the floorboards. My prayer gesture takes less than 0.1 seconds. Before your Ko-strike could reach my neck, the 99th palm would flatten the entire square mile around us into dust. Netero set his empty cup down with a firm clack. Still. To force an old monster like me to pull out the 99th palm just to stay safe? Netero laughed heartily, a deep, resonant sound echoing through the quiet office. Ho, ho, ho! The future of the association is in absurdly dangerous hands. September 1996 can't come soon enough. As Netero leaned back, letting the warm tea soothe his throat, his mind began to place Ren onto the unwritten mental ranking board he kept for the strongest Nen users alive. Top 10 in the world? Netero thought, his eyes narrowing as he weighed every active monster in the current landscape. Xeno Zoldyck, Silva, Ging, Botobai, and the phantom horrors lurking in the dark corners of the world. No, not top 10, Netero murmured softly to himself with a slow, deliberate shake of his head. In terms of raw, versatile combat efficiency, tactical spatial manipulation, and sheer defensive survivability, the kid has already crossed into the top 5 Nen users in the world. Netero stared down at his own calloused hands, remembering the absolute, unbreakable resistance of Ren's Aegis of the Faithful. To harmonize 5 categories at absolute equilibrium without a single flaw. Even Ging didn't reach that level of structural perfection at 19. Netero chuckled quietly, a mixture of awe and fierce pride in his voice. He isn't just strong for his age. If he continues refining that star iron and polishing those spatial portals for another 4 years, by the time 1996 arrives, he won't just be standing among the top 5. He'll be the one every monster in Yorknew is running away from. Netero picked up his teacup once more, raising it toward the setting sun in a silent toast to the young double-star hunter. Ho ho ho, a true masterpiece of a hunter. Chapter 123, The Anvil and the Jester. Date, December 22nd, 1992. Location, the Aegis Anvil Workshop, Remote Forest Estate. The remaining months of 1992 were consumed by the ring of steel and the roar of superheated Nen flames. Realizing the gaps exposed during my spar with Netero, I retreated to my private workshop to forge my baseline capabilities. Day after day, I channeled my golden green specialist aura directly into the furnace, using high-density shu to temper the unrefined star iron harvested from the Padokea ruins. My secrets remained absolute. No one, not Netero, not Ging, not even Kale, knew about my Isekai origin, my absolute foresight of the HXH storyline, or the secret dual postmortem resonance engine thrumming within my soul. To the world, I was simply an impossibly gifted 19-year-old specialist double-star hunter whose aura recovery defied normal human limits. By late December, the workshop was lined with my first successful custom star iron creations: razor-thin aura-conductive throwing needles, reinforced wrist bracers, and a refined core head for the Broom of the Wrath Angel. Kale's Visit. The heavy oak doors of the freaked open, letting in a gust of freezing winter wind and swirl of pine-scented snow. Kale walked in, shaking the frost off his dark wool coat. At 44 years old, my former mentor still looked built like a stone pillar, though a few subtle streaks of silver now lined his dark hair and beard. Still hammering away, Ren? Kale asked, stepping up to the glowing anvil and warming his calloused hands over the star iron embers. Rest is for the weak, I smirked, setting down my blacksmithing hammer with a heavy metallic clang. What brings you all the way out to the forest, Kale? Association business? Dat Kale leaned against a wooden pillar, his expression turning unusually solemn as he pulled out a small black and white intelligence folder from his inner pocket. A rumor's been circulating through the Hunter Underground for the last 3 months, Kale said, dropping the file onto my workbench. Some crazy, wandering lunatic dressed like a carnival jester has been slaughtering mid-tier hunters and martial artists across the southern provinces. The Grim Reaper's shadow. I wiped sweat from my forehead with a towel, eyeing the folder calmly. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. A magician? I asked quietly, playing along. A psychopathic one, Kale growled, his jaw tightening. He uses aura-infused playing cards and transmutative Nen tricks. He doesn't care about money, bounties, or political power. He literally roams from district to district looking for strong opponents to fight, and when he finds someone with potential, he either butchers them on the spot or lets them ripen like fruit. Kale looked up, his sharp eyes locking onto mine. The association blacklisted him last week after he killed 2 pro-hunters in a tavern brawl down in York News Lower District. They're calling him the Grim Reaper. I leaned back against my forge, a faint, razor-sharp smile breaking across my face as I looked at the blurred photo inside the folder. A tall, pale man with flame-like hair, teardrop face paint, and a twisted, ecstatic smirk. Hisoka Moro, I thought, my golden-green aura flaring with a subtle, dangerous pulse beneath my skin. Sounds like a headache, I said softly, closing the folder. Is he coming anywhere near our sector? Not yet, Kale said, crossing his arms. He seems focused on the Heavens Arena district for now. But keep your guard up, Ren. A monster who fights purely for the thrill of the kill is the most unpredictable kind of enemy. Don't worry, Kale, I murmured, staring into the bright orange heart of the star iron furnace. If that clown ever crosses my path, I'll make sure his show gets canceled permanently. Chapter 124, The Christmas Encounter. Date December 24 to 25th, 1992. Location, outskirts of Meteor City Transit Zone. Every year on Christmas Eve, Kale quietly returned to the border camps near Meteor City. It was a tradition he never advertised. Working alongside Sister Alina and Father Thomas from the St. Jude Refuge, Kale helped teenage orphans who had reached 14 or 15, kids looking for an exit out of the lawless scrapyards, find entry-level work and safe housing in the outer provinces. Snow fell lightly over the iron fences of the transit outpost. This year, 3 kids sat in the back of our transport truck, clutching small, threadbare coats. Lucas, 15, male, quiet and hyper-vigilant. He had survived 4 years scaver-sorting metals in District 8 after his parents disappeared in a turf clash. Strong hands, tailor-made for blacksmith apprentice work. Mina, 14, female, fierce and protective of her younger peers, she had managed St. Jude's kitchen supply ledgers, keeping 30 kids fed on meager rations through sheer stubborn organization. Daryl, 14, male, frail, soft-spoken, but possesses sharp eyesight. He wanted nothing to do with fighting. He just dreamed of learning carpentry somewhere where the sky didn't smell like burning plastic. Kale handed Lucas and Mina their entry vouchers for the Southern Timber Guild, then looked over at me. Ren, Kale said, patting Darrell's shoulder. Take Darrell toward the western checkpoint. The foreman at Retzer's lumber yard is expecting him. It's the opposite direction from the main transport route. Got it, I nodded, looking down at the nervous 14-year-old. Let's go, kid. Keep your hands in your pockets. Oh, okay. Thank you, sir, Darrell stammered, falling into step beside me. The mid-midnight walk. The walk to Retzer's yard took 40 minutes through a desolate, snow-draped alleyway district. I dropped Darrell off at the foreman's warm office, ensuring his papers were signed and his lodging room was locked in. By the time I turned back toward my own route, the clock on the town square tower struck midnight. December 25th. Snow drifted lazily through the sodium vapor streetlights. I pulled my collar up, keeping my tens suppressed to a razor-thin, invisible whisper. My newly forged star iron bracers rested comfortably against my forearms beneath my sleeves. Shuffle, shuffle. The sound was soft, almost delicate, like a fresh deck of plastic-coated playing cards being fanned out in absolute rhythm. I stopped dead in my tracks. Standing 50 yards ahead, leaning against a rusted lamppost under the dim yellow light, was a tall, unnaturally lean man in a high-collared vest. His hair was slicked back into bright magenta spikes, and under the streetlight, the painted pink star on his right cheek and blue teardrop on his left caught the snow. Hisoka Moro. Unseen appraisal errors. He didn't draw a weapon. He simply held a single card, the ace of spades, between two long, pale fingers, spinning it effortlessly across his knuckles. Hisoka turned his head slowly, his narrow, amber eyes locking onto mine through the falling snow. My, Hisoka murmured, his voice a smooth, purring drawl that carried unnaturally clear through the quiet night air. What a delicious smell! He feels it, I thought, my heart beating in a calm, rhythmic pulse. Even with my Zetsu holding my golden-green aura down to a ghost-like whisper, a monster like Hisoka didn't evaluate people purely through visible nen. He evaluated presence, posture, weight distribution, and the quiet instinct of a killer. Hisoka took 3 slow, deliberate steps forward, his hips swaying slightly. A thick, sickening aura began to seep from his body, a mixture of violent malice, playful curiosity, and pure, unadulterated bloodlust. You're suppressing it so neatly, aren't you, Red Apple? Hisoka smiled, his lips pulling back into a sharp, predatory grin. So dense, so quiet, yet your shadow carries the weight of a mountain. Does he want to fight right now? I stood motionless on the snow-covered cobblestones. My right hand rested loosely inside my coat, 3 inches away from the spatial portal marker inside the resting horizon. If he threw those cards, he wasn't facing a standard hunter. He was about to collide with a double-star specialist holding a 45-meter N Aegis of the Faithful and 2 post-mortem engines waiting to tear through the midnight quiet. Pressed aura, bloodlust is flaring. Chapter 125, Sweeping the Street. Date, December 25th, 1992. Location, deserted alleyway, outskirts of Meteor City Transit Zone. My. Such a heavy look, Hisoka purred, stepping through the falling snow. His amber eyes shimmered with that sickening predatory thrill, the look of a monster spotting a prime target. Are you going to open your present for me, little hunter? I stood motionless under the sodium streetlight. He wants a fight. A real one. I knew if I pulled out my spatial portals or my dual post-mortem engine, the crazy bastard would become utterly obsessed, tracking me to the ends of the earth until 1996. But if I beat him into the dirt with the most ridiculous, underwhelming weapon imaginable, I'd crush his fascination entirely. I don't want trouble tonight, Jester, I said, my voice dropping to a cold deadpan register. But if trouble comes looking for me, I clean it up. Round 1, the bungee gum trap. Show me how you clean! Swoosh! Hisoka flicked his wrists. 4 aura-infused playing cards sliced through the night air like razor blades, whistling toward my throat, paired with a hidden, invisible strand of bungee gum stretching toward my ankles. Sub-ability, the Broom of the Wrath Angel. Clang! In a flash of golden light, a heavy 5-foot metallic broom, braided with solid iron fibers, manifested in my hands. Flooding the handle with massive shoe and raw enhancement, I swung it downward in a brutal overhead arc. Technique, downward crush. Boom! The heavy iron head smashed into the cobblestones, unleashing a shockwave that shattered the cards to dust and completely severed his bungee gum tether before it could latch onto my legs. Hisoka's grin widened into a manic, razor-sharp smile. A broom? How delightful! Round 2, sweeping the trash. Before he could leap backward, I closed the gap with explosive speed, my 6-in-1 frame blurring through the falling snow. I didn't use spatial portals. I didn't use golden tendrils. Just pure, unadulterated martial arts, heavy ken, and a 5-foot sweeping tool used like a heavy warhammer. Clang! Bang! Crash! Hisoka tried to throw a counterpunch infused with ko, but I parried his wrist with the broom's iron shaft, stepped inside his guard, and drove the heavy metallic end directly into his sternum. Whack! The impact blew the air clean out of Hisoka's lungs. He skidded back 20 yards across the icy asphalt, coughing up a spray of blood onto the white snow. What's the matter, Jester? I said, my golden-green aura flaring smoothly around the iron bristles as I walked toward him at a slow, relentless pace. Sister Elena back at St. Jude's used to beat naughty kids with a broom when they wouldn't listen. You look like a very naughty kid. Round 3, total trash cleaning. Hisoka's eyes flared with a dark, furious frenzy. Blood ran down his painted cheek, and his aura burst out in full, suffocating malice. He sprinted forward, shooting 6 bungee gum lines from his fingers to sling himself around my flanks at terrifying speed. Let's see you clean this? I didn't even look at him. I tracked his micro-movements using my passive 45-meter N, spun on my heel, and unleashed the full output of my sub-ability. Technique, the Great Sweep. Dasso! Boom! A colossal horizontal wave of compressed kinetic force blasted from the iron bristles. The atmospheric pressure caught Hisoka mid-air, shattering his bungee gum tethers and blasting him 30 yards through 2 solid brick walls. Crash! Rubble and red brick dust showered over the alleyway. The disappointment. I walked through the dust cloud, resting the heavy metallic broom casually over my shoulder. Hisoka lay slumped amidst the pile of broken bricks. His vest was torn to shreds, his magenta hair was flattened with gray mortar dust, his nose was broken, and his left arm hung limply at his side. He was coughing blood, staring up at me through swollen eyes. Hisoka tried to form that familiar sadistic smirk, waiting for the reveal, waiting for the secret Hatsu, waiting to feel the thrill of a grand rival. I just looked down at him with an expression of pure, unbothered boredom. I let out a long, disappointed sigh, shaking my head. A magician, roaming around slaughtering mid-tier hunters? And this is all you've got? I said, my voice deadpan and dismissive. I nudged a piece of broken brick off his chest with the bristles of my broom. What a total waste of an ability, I muttered softly, turning my back on him. Bungee gum? Rubber and gum? You spent your whole life developing a Hatsu based on cheap candy, just to get beaten into the pavement by a sweeping tool. Hisoka froze. The manic excitement in his eyes instantly died, replaced by a cold, humiliated shock. To a man who viewed himself as a grand judge of talent, being dismissed as a pathetic, uninteresting waste of space hit harder than any physical strike ever could. If you ever come near me, Kale, or the kids from St. Jude, again, I said over my shoulder, my aura flashing with a brief, terrifying pulse of pure ko, I won't just sweep you into the trash. I'll throw you in the incinerator. The departure. Without waiting for an answer, I dissolved the broom of the Wrath Angel back into raw aura and stepped into the darkness of the alley. Behind me, Hisoka remained lying in the cold rubble, staring up at the snow-filled night sky in absolute quiet defeat. The thrill was gone. The mystery was gone. To him, Ren wasn't a ripening fruit or an exciting rival. Ren was a brick wall enhancer with a ridiculous broom who viewed Hisoka as nothing more than annoying street litter. Hisoka would never bother me again. I adjusted my dark coat collar against the winter wind, stepping into a silent portal to the resting horizon. Stupid, crazy jester, I muttered to myself. Now, back to the forge. Hisoka lay flat on his back in the freezing sludge, the cold snow melting against his feverish skin. Every breath felt like dragging broken glass through his lungs. His left arm was completely dead, his jaw throbbed, and a thick crimson smear ran from his split lip down into his ruined collar. For the first time in his life, his mind wasn't racing with tactical calculations or hypersexualized bloodlust. It was completely, utterly blank. A broom, Hisoka thought, staring up at the dark, snow-dusted sky through a swollen eyelid. He used a broom. There was no hidden spatial grandiosity, no intricate game of cat and mouse, no grand revelation of a hidden Hatsu. Just raw, suffocating, industrial force wrapped in iron bristles. Worse than the physical beating was the look in my eyes before I turned my back on him. That flat, utterly unbothered deadpan gaze you give to a stray piece of plastic blowing across a sidewalk. A total waste of an ability. Cheap candy. The words echoed in Hisoka's head like a heavy brass bell. His pride. The absolute, unwavering belief that he was the apex predator picking fruit off the vine hadn't just been challenged. It had been categorized as an annoying chore that I had to hurry up and sweep away so I could get back to my real life. The thrill, the erotic tension, the manic anticipation of a grand showdown, all of it evaporated into the freezing winter night, replaced by a cold, sour humiliation. He didn't want a rematch. He didn't want to let me ripen. The jester had been thoroughly, unceremoniously thrown into the gutter, left with the soul-crushing realization that to me, he wasn't even worth remembering. POV. Ren God, for the fucking holy shit. I stepped out of the spatial portal into the warm, quiet interior of the resting horizon, letting the heavy oak door click shut behind me. The ambient golden light of my sanctuary bathed the stone floor, reflecting off the rows of star iron ingots and ancient manuscripts resting on the wooden shelves. I stood there in the quiet for a solid 10 seconds, my dark coat slightly dusted with snow, before I let out a long, ragged breath and collapsed backward onto an overstuffed leather armchair. It actually worked. I muttered to the ceiling, putting my hands over my face and bursting into a low, breathless laugh. I really didn't think that would work. I had prepared myself for a nightmare. This was Hisoka Moro, the wild card of the Hunter universe, a guy who routinely turns his own limbs into rubber trampolines just to murder people for fun. I thought I'd have to burn through half my spatial reserves, reveal my Aegis, or leak a fraction of my dual post-mortem engine just to keep him from wrapping bungee gum around my windpipe. And what did I do? I hit him with a giant metal cleaning broom. I raised my right hand, manifesting the broom of the Wrath Angel one more time. The 5-foot metallic staff materialized into my palm, its braided iron bristles gleaming under the warm sanctuary lights. I stared at it with newfound absolute reverence. Forget the star iron armor, forget the spatial daggers. I chuckled, shaking my head as I traced a finger down the solid iron handle. The broom really is a divine weapon. Hail to the great broom. Sister Elena's old orphan cleaning logic had just flattened one of the most dangerous serial killers in the world, saved my secret kit from being exposed to the plot, and permanently cured Hisoka of his obsession with me, all in under 3 minutes. I dissolved the broom back into raw aura, letting out a satisfied sigh as my post-mortem engine quietly topped off my reserves. The road to York New was clean. The secrets were safe. I stood up from the armchair, adjusted my dark coat, and walked over to the Aegis anvil. Now, I smirked, grabbing my blacksmithing hammer. Time to get back to work. Chapter 125.5, Interlude. The Real Apex Predator, revised again. Date December 27, 1992. Location, St. Jude Refuge, Outer Meteor City border zone. Hisoka dragged his sore, heavily bandaged body through the snow-covered wrought iron gates of St. Jude. His pride was shattered. His left arm was in a sling, and his mind was still plagued by the humiliation he had suffered 3 nights ago. Father Thomas, Hisoka thought, his narrow eyes searching the dilapidated courtyard. A retired 1-star blacklist hunter hiding in an orphanage in his late 90s stride, pushing 47 or 48 now, a real veteran, a real fight to wash away the memory of that terrible, cursed broom. He spotted the man near the woodpile, splitting thick logs with clean, effortless, aura-infused axe swings. Hisoka's lips pulled back into a dark, desperate smirk. He flicked a playing card between his uninjured fingers, stepping forward with a flare of suppressed malice. "Pardon me, father." Hisoka purred, his voice dripping with theatrical bloodlust. "Would you care to grant a wandering soul his final confession?" Whack! Before Hisoka could even finish his line, a heavy wooden straw broom struck him across the back of his head with the sound of a falling oak tree. "What did I say about bringing wild animals into the yard?" A sharp, furious voice shrieked. Hisoka stumbled forward into the snow, dropping his playing card. He whirled around, his aura flaring in pure shock, only to look up into the terrifying, glaring eyes of Sister Elena. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her middle 30s, wearing a clean white habit, holding a standard wooden sweeping broom like an executioner's broadsword. She didn't have Nen. She didn't have Ten, Ren, or Gyo. She just possessed the absolute, terrifying authority of a head matron who had run St. Jude with an iron fist since her 20s. "Sister Elena," Father Thomas stammered, instantly dropping his axe and standing at crisp military attention like a caught schoolboy. "I was just splitting wood." "Quiet, Thomas. You're letting strays in again." Sister Elena snapped, turning her deadly glare back onto Hisoka. Hisoka, still operating on pure survival instincts and severe head trauma from 3 days ago, stared at the wooden broom in her hands. The broom, his brain short-circuited. Why do they all have brooms? Is this a regional Hatsu? Is the entire district a secret order of sweeping-type enhancers? "Look at you," Sister Elena scolded, poking Hisoka harshly in the chest with the broom handle. "Painted face, ridiculous clothes, blood on your collar, dragging your feet. If you're going to dress like a clown, you make yourself useful. I am a magician." Hisoka tried to purr, though his voice lacked any actual confidence. "I seek the thrill of absolute." Thwack! She hit his shin with the bristles. "I don't care if you're the king of Kakin. The kids in Ward 3 haven't smiled all week. Sister Alina pointed the broom toward the indoor recreation room. Go inside, juggle some colored balls, make a balloon dog, and entertain those children. If I see one card thrown at a wall, I'm scrubbing your face with lye soap. Hisoka stood frozen in the snow. A top-tier transmuter, a serial killer, a man feared by the Hunter Association, completely overwhelmed by the sheer, unyielding pressure of a 35-year-old church matron. His unconscious self-preservation instincts, honed over 100 battles, told him one absolute truth. If you fight this woman, something far worse will happen to you. Balloon dogs. Hisoka muttered, his amber eyes completely blank. Move it! Sister Elena barked, raising the broom again. Yes, sister. Hisoka whispered, stiffly turning around and shuffling toward the playroom like a defeated soldier. End of the day. 5 p.m. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long orange shadows over the snow. Hisoka stumbled out of the front gates of St. Jude, looking like a man who had survived a 5-year war in the Dark Continent. His magenta hair was completely deflated. He was missing 3 deck cards. His vest was covered in sticky juice stains. A small orphan named Darrell had tied a bright yellow ribbon around his left ear, and his throat was dry from twisting 74 rubber balloon animals for screaming toddlers. He stopped at the edge of the road, leaning heavily against a wooden fence post, staring down at his trembling, pale hands. Brooms. Hisoka whispered to the cold wind, his voice shaking with genuine psychological trauma. The broom is truly the most terrifying weapon in this world. He ripped the yellow ribbon off his ear, pulled his torn coat tightly around his chest, and began walking as fast as his broken body would allow, swearing to the heavens, I am never, ever coming back to this district again. Chapter 126, Shadows of the Throne. Date, August 14th, 1993. Location, Kingdom of Delvau, Central Continent. The Kingdom of Delvau was a prosperous island nation tucked between the northern trade routes, wealthy, ancient, and utterly rotten at the core. Unlike Kakin's public, grand-scale seed-sorting ceremony, Delvau's royal succession wars were fought in absolute secrecy. When the old king fell ill 6 months ago, the royal court turned into a meat grinder. Prince Donald, the king's 4th son, had zero ambition for the throne. He was a quiet, broad-shouldered man who spent his wealth funding naval trade guilds and maritime research. But because he possessed significant military backing and immense personal popularity among the citizenry, the other ambitious royal factions saw him as an immediate threat, and his family as easy leverage. When the contract reached Kale and me through the Hunter Association, Donald didn't ask for royal guards or military escorts. He hired hunters. The assignment. Our transport arrived at the prince's secluded coastal estate just as dusk settled over the cliffs. The estate was an iron-gated fortress built against the sea walls. Inside the main courtyard, 4 heavily armed military bodyguards, outfitted in high-grade Kevlar, assault carbines, and tactical earpieces, stood at rigid attention around Prince Donald. Double-star Hunter Wren, Senior Hunter Kale, Prince Donald said, stepping forward to shake our hands with a firm, steady grip. His eyes were heavy with fatigue. Thank you for accepting this on short notice. We read the brief, Your Highness, Kale said, crossing his arms and surveying the courtyard with a veteran's practiced eye. You have 4 private guards handling outer perimeter security. Correct, Prince Donald nodded, leading us into the private residence. Captain Vance and his men are former special forces. They will handle the grounds, the gates, and the surveillance room. But my request for you two is specific. He opened the heavy oak doors to the inner sanctuary, where a young, elegant woman sat on a velvet sofa, holding a 5-year-old girl while a 7-year-old boy played quietly on the rug with wooden ships. My wife, Princess Yvain, and my children, Leo and Clara, Donald said softly, his voice tight with emotion. If the perimeter fails, if elite assassins break through, your sole duty is to protect them. Do not worry about me. Do not worry about the estate. Keep my family alive. Assessing the defense, I stepped quietly into the room, keeping my 6'1" frame relaxed, letting a faint, invisible whisper of my 10 coat my skin. At 20 years old, my aura control was practically seamless. They won't get through the inner room, Your Highness, I said, eyeing the stone architecture and floor-to-ceiling windows facing the sea cliffs. We'll divide the sectors, Kale added, turning to me. I'll take position on the upper balcony overlooking the cliff path. Ren, you stay inside the sanctuary room directly with the princess and the kids. Understood, I nodded. As Kale stepped outside to coordinate with Captain Vance's perimeter team, I walked over to the corner of the sanctuary room, adjusting my dark coat. I quietly mapped out 3 invisible spatial portal anchors, Sanctuary Waypoint, under the rug and behind the bookshelf, using high-level in. If high-tier Nen users or elite assassins crashed through the windows, I could fold the princess and the children straight into the resting horizon in under half a second. Outside, the ocean waves slammed against the dark cliffs and the rain began to fall. The Succession War had finally reached our doorstep. Mission briefing file, Royal Family Protection, classification, high priority private contract. Client, Prince Donald de Delvaux, 4th Royal Prince, contractors. Assigned Senior Hunter Kale, Double Star Hunter Ren. Client overview name, Donald de Delvaux, age 38. Title, 4th Prince of the Kingdom of Delvaux, Director of Maritime Guild Commerce. Background, unlike his elder brothers, Prince Donald spent his youth away from court politics, serving 10 years as an officer in Delvaux's merchant naval fleet. He single-handedly modernized the kingdom's shipping lanes, earning him massive popular support among the working class and trade unions. Political position. He has officially renounced all claims to the throne following the king's illness. However, because his maritime guilds control 60% of the nation's trade revenue, rival factions, specifically the first and second princes, view him as an unacceptable wild card who could swing the succession at any moment. VIP Profile 1. The spouse name, Princess Yvaine de Delvaux, née Vance. Age, 33. Background. Born into a low-tier aristocratic family of former naval tacticians, Yvaine met Donald during his tenure in the Southern Port District. She manages the estate's private charity networks and holds a degree in historical linguistics. Threat level, extremely high. Assassination factions view her as the primary psychological pressure point to force Prince Donald into surrendering his naval assets or signing over guild control. VIP Profile 2, the heir. Name Leo de Delvaux, age 7 profile, a quiet, exceptionally observant boy who spends most of his time studying maritime maps and building wooden ship models. Shows high intellectual potential. Threat level, high. Kidnapping risk. Hostile royal factions may seek to take him hostage to compel Prince Donald's public endorsement of a specific successor. VIP Profile 3, the youngest name, Clara de Delvaux, age 5 profile, energetic and attached to her mother. Unaware of the political storm surrounding her family. Threat level, high. Collateral risk. Intelligence and threat assessment. Primary adversary, unknown elite mercenary group, hired Nen assassins backed by the First Prince's Shadow Council. Expected infiltration method, nighttime assault via the sea cliffs under cover of the storm, bypassing radar surveillance. Mission directive, maintain 100% survival rate for Princess Yvaine, Leo, and Clara. Total lethal force authorized against all unauthorized intruders entering the inner sanctuary perimeter. On-track financial briefing. Total contract value, 500,000. Jenny, 4.5 million USD. Payment breakdown. Base retainer, upfront, 150,000 Jenny. Completion bonus, 350,000 Jenny upon full evacuation safety. Hazard risk clause, full medical coverage and asset reimbursement covered by Prince Donald distribution agreement. Senior Hunter Kale, 250,000 Jenny, 50%. Double Star Hunter Ren, 250,000 Jenny, 50%. 0,000 Jenny, 50%. Prince Donald didn't skimp on his family's safety. 500 million Jenny was top-tier money for a private protection gig, the kind of payout usually reserved for high-stakes blacklist bounties or major corporate escorts. With 250 million Jenny coming straight into my private account after tonight, it would easily cover all the high-density star iron refining materials and forge upgrades I needed for the upcoming 1996 York New preparation. Chapter 127, The Chessboard of Delvaux. Date, August 14th, 1993, 9 p.m. Location, study room, Prince Donald's estate. Information in a succession war is just as lethal as a blade. While the rain beat against the heavy glass windows of the study, Kale and I laid out the intelligence dossiers on the royal contenders. If we knew who was pulling the strings, we could predict the vector of attack before the first assassin even set foot on the estate grounds. Dossier breakdown. The contenders' royal succession candidates. First Prince, Prince Aldous de Delvaux, age 42. Personality, arrogant, ruthless, traditionalist. Assessment, medium threat, controls the royal guard and land forces, prefers direct legal framing and brutal military pressure, views Donald as beneath him, currently preoccupied with the second prince. Second Prince, Prince Malachor de Delvaux, age 39. Personality, paranoid, obsessive, calculating. Assessment, extreme threat to Donald. Operates through black markets, spies, and covert assassins. Needs Donald's maritime shipping routes to fund foreign mercenaries and secure supply lanes. Third Princess, Princess Rosalind de Delvaux, age 35. Personality, quiet, passive, allied with domestic religious factions. Assessment, low threat. Lacks covert strike capabilities. Fifth Princess, Princess Vivienne de Delvaux, age 18. Personality, sincere, exceptionally smart, deeply responsible, yet unpretentious. Known to complain endearingly about minor daily trivialities, like court tea temperature or damp coastal weather. Assessment, zero threat, ally. Donald's younger sister. Shares an exceptionally close, affectionate bond with Donald, Princess Yvain, and the kids. Has no personal ambition for the throne, prioritizing the safety and well-being of the common populace above all else. The True Heart of Delvaux. The study door clicked open softly, and an 18-year-old girl walked in carrying a tray of hot spiced tea. She wore a simple dark blue velvet dress, far too plain for royal standards, but comfortable. "Donald, you're letting the tea go stone cold again," Vivienne complained with a small sigh, setting the cups down on the mahogany desk. "And the sea drafts in this room are dreadful for Yvain's joints. Honestly, for someone who commands a whole naval fleet, you manage a fireplace like an amateur." Donald chuckled warmly, pulling his younger sister into a brief, affectionate side hug. "Thank you, Viv." He turned to Cale and me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and quiet regret. "If Vivienne had been born a man," Donald said softly, shaking his head, "the court wouldn't even be fighting over this bloody crown. She understands administrative governance better than all three of our older brothers combined, and her heart actually beats for the people." Vivienne waved her hand dismissively, sitting on the edge of the desk while brushing back of her dark hair. "Oh, please, don't start with the 'if you were a man' lecture again, Donald," she murmured softly, her tone turning solemn. "I have zero ambition to sit on a golden throne that sits atop a mountain of corpses. Why must a nation be ruled by someone who simply inherits a surname? I wish this pointless succession war had never started." She looked over at the quiet hallway where Yvain was putting 7-year-old Leo and 5-year-old Clara to bed. "The people of Delvaux don't care about royal bloodlines or political pride," Vivienne whispered, her voice full of genuine sincerity. "They want clean water, fair trade, and peace. I hope, maybe one day, long after this madness is over, our people will finally have the freedom to choose their own future, to choose their own leaders, rather than being ruled by warlords in crowns." The tactical discussion. After Vivienne stepped out to help Yvain with the children, Cale leaned over the desk, tapping a thick finger against Prince Malachor's dossier. "It's Malachor," Cale said flatly, his voice low. "Aldous is a hothead. If he wanted Donald dead, he'd send a company of royal guards under the guise of a tax raid. But Malachor? He operates in the shadow. He stands to gain the most by holding Donald's family hostage." "I agree," I replied, tracing the coastline maps spread across the table. "Malachor knows Donald won't surrender his maritime trade guilds for money or threats. But if Malachor captures Yvain, Leo, or Clara, Donald signs over the ports within an hour." "And how does Malachor win the overall succession war?" Cale asked, testing my strategic grasp. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the structural layout of the kingdom. "He doesn't win it through direct combat," I answered, a faint smirk touching my lips. "Based on the intelligence, here's how the succession ends. Wren's strategic prediction, Phase 1, the hostage strain. Malachor sends high-tier stealth assassins tonight to secure Donald's family, forcing Donald to surrender the naval fleet. Phase 2, the blockade. Malachor uses Donald's fleet to impose a complete naval blockade on the capital, cutting off food and foreign trade to Prince Aldous' land forces. Phase 3, the checkmate. Prince Aldous' military, starved of supplies and funding, mutinies within 3 months. Malachor takes the throne not through a glorious battle, but by choking the kingdom until everyone else surrenders. Cale let out a quiet, appreciative whistle, tossing the dossier back onto the table. Brilliant analysis, kid. Which means tonight isn't just a random hit squad. Cale's eyes hardened as he checked the chamber of his sidearm. Malachor is sending his absolute best covert killers. They won't come through the front gate, and they won't care about collateral damage. Let them come, I murmured, my golden-green aura flaring smoothly beneath my skin as the storm outside thunderously broke over the ocean cliffs. They're entering a trap they don't even know exists. Chapter 128, Cold Gazes in the Capital. Date, November 12, 1993. Location, high-end shopping district, Delvo, capital. The silent war raged on through the autumn of 1993. Prince Malachor was persistent, but his covert networks were running out of disposable personnel. Over the last 3 months, Cale and I had systematically intercepted and dismantled every single shadow team sent to abduct or assassinate Princess Yvain, Leo, Clara, and Princess Vivienne. Whether it was nighttime sniper nests, poisoned water filtration units, or silent breach squads coming over the sea cliffs, my 45-meter and Cale's veteran hunting instincts neutralized them long before they could even lay eyes on the royal family. With the threat temporarily stifled, Princess Vivienne had badgered us for 2 straight days until Donald finally agreed to let us escort her, Yvain and the kids, into the capital's high-end market square for an afternoon outing. The promenade, honestly, Donald keeps them locked in that seaside estate as if fresh air were toxic, Vivienne complained with an affectionate sigh, holding 7-year-old Leo's hand while 5-year-old Clara picked out wooden trinkets at a merchant's stall. The children need sunlight, Cale, not just stone walls and tactical briefs. They're alive, Your Highness, Cale replied casually, walking 3 paces behind them, his sharp eyes constantly scanning the crowds, rooftops, and street vendors. At 45 years old, my mentor moved with the relaxed, ready posture of an old lion. Alive is a very high luxury in a succession war. I walked slightly to the left, hands tucked into the pockets of my dark coat, keeping my zetsu tuned to a microscopic thread, while my passive spatial awareness covered the surrounding 50 yards. Then, as we crossed the marble archway into the central plaza, my aura flared with a sudden, icy jolt. The meeting. Standing near the corner of a high-end textile shop, half draped in the shadow of a stone pillar, was a young man with long, jet-black hair falling over his shoulders. He wore dark, form-fitting clothes, his skin unnaturally pale, and his face was a void. 0 expression, 0 emotion. His eyes were giant, black, pitch-dark voids that seemed to swallow the afternoon light. Illumi Zoldyck. My mind ran the numbers instantly. Born in 1975, he's 18 years old right now. At 18, Illumi was already an elite contract killer for the Zoldyck family, operating silently across the continents. He was here in Delvo, likely executing a separate, completely unrelated hit, or perhaps evaluating the political situation on behalf of a private client. Illumi turned his head slowly. Those vast, pitch-black eyes locked directly onto mine as I walked past. He feels it, I thought, my heart beating in a perfectly calm, steady rhythm. Even with my zetsu holding my golden-green specialist aura down to a whisper, a monster like Illumi could sense the absolute density of my posture and the razor-sharp spatial weight surrounding my shadow. For 5 agonizing seconds, time seemed to slow down. I didn't reach for my coat. I didn't manifest the broom. I simply looked back into those empty black eyes with a cool, deadpan gaze, ready to unfold Aegis of the Faithful or pull Yvain and the children into the resting horizon at the first micro-movement of a Nen needle. Step, step, step. No bloodlust flashed. No words were spoken. No weapons were drawn. We simply passed each other on the cobblestone walkway, 2 apex predators crossing paths in the middle of a crowded civilian market, letting the distance grow between us until he faded back into the shadows of the textile alley. Tightening the net, Cale stepped up beside me, his hand resting loosely near his sidearm beneath his wool coat. He hadn't turned his head, but his jaw was tight. "That boy," Cale murmured, his voice so low only I could hear it over the sound of the plaza fountain. The long hair, 0 presence, black eyes like a corpse. You recognized him? Illumi, I answered softly, keeping my eyes fixed forward as Princess Vivienne pointed out a pastry shop to the kids. Eldest son of Silva Zoldyck. He's 18. Kale let out a slow, heavy breath through his nose, his eyes narrowing as he adjusted his coat collar. A Zoldyck in the capital, Kale said flatly. If Malachor hired the Kukuru mountain family to finish this succession, we're not dealing with mid-tier mercenaries anymore. He wasn't targeting us today, I said, eyeing the alleyway where Illumi had vanished. If a Zoldyck comes for a target, they don't linger in a plaza shopping district, but it means the underworld's eyes are fully locked onto Delvaux. I looked back at Princess Yvain, Vivienne, and the kids. Yeah, I murmured, my golden-green aura pulsing beneath my skin like a quiet furnace. We need to tighten security. The assassin's appraisal POV, Illumi Zoldyck. The crowd moved around me like leaves blowing in the autumn wind, inconsequential, fragile, and utterly ignorant of how close they were to death. I stood in the shadow of the stone pillar, adjusting the silent Nen needle tucked beneath my cuff. My initial contract in the capital was simple: eliminate a high-ranking official linked to the Royal Maritime Trade. That target was already dead. His heart stopped by an undetected microneedle 2 hours ago in his private sauna. I was preparing to head to the airship port when the crowd shifted, and my radar caught 2 distinct blips entering the plaza. 2 men escorting a young noblewoman, a mother and 2 small children. The older man was mid-40s, broad-shouldered, carrying the relaxed, weathered stance of a veteran hunter. High density of 10, sharp perimeter scanning, 0 wasted motion. A dangerous man, but predictable. It was the younger one who made the skin on my neck prickle. He was 20. Tall, dark coat, moving with a fluid, terrifying lightness. To a normal person, he looked like a handsome, quiet bodyguard, but through my refined gyo, his zetsu wasn't just a basic aura suppression. It was a heavy, dense, razor-sharp vacuum. When our eyes met, I felt it immediately. The young man didn't flinch, he didn't draw a weapon, and his pulse didn't spike by a single beat per minute. His dark eyes locked onto mine with a cold, absolute deadpan stare. A look that said, if you take 1 step toward these children, I will tear you to pieces before you can flick a needle. Ren. I thought, my mind recalling the internal family record from 3 years ago. Back in 1990, Father had taken a contract only for this exact young man to intervene and force Silva Zoldyck himself to suspend the execution. Father rarely suspended contracts for anyone, yet he had formally marked Ren in our family registry as a high-hazard non-engagement target without senior approval. As they passed me, my mind calculated the profit-to-risk ratio in under 3 seconds. I would not attack. Zoldicks do not fight battles where the survival rate falls below acceptable margins without a massive hazard fee. I could not handle both Ren and Kale simultaneously on an open street without taking catastrophic damage, or worse, dying for a client whose identity remained masked behind 3 layers of proxy brokers. I backed into the dark alley, pulling a small, encrypted satellite phone from my pocket and dialing a secure family frequency. Ring. Ring. Illumi. Silva's deep, rumbling voice echoed through the receiver. Is the primary official cleared? The official is dead, Father, I said flatly, keeping my eyes fixed on the distant figures of Ren and Kale as they navigated the plaza. However, the separate anonymous contract inquiry regarding the capture of Prince Donald's family needs a major requote. Oh? Silva asked, his tone turning serious. Did the secret client hire outside guards, or did Donald secure high-tier hunter protection? It's Ren, I replied calmly. He's managing the family's direct protection alongside senior hunter Kale, the same Ren from the 1990 incident. A solo attempt by me has a low success rate. There was a brief silence on the line before Silva spoke again. If Ren is on the defense, a single operative is insufficient, Silva said, his voice heavy with practical calculation. If this secret client wants us to break a defense of that caliber, they will need to triple the budget. I will bring your grandfather Zeno. Understood, I said softly, flipping the satellite phone shut. I will monitor their movements from the shadows until you arrive. POV, Ren. We kept moving through the market square until Princess Yvain and Vivienne had finished buying sweets for the kids. Ren, Kale murmured, walking beside me as we loaded the family into the armored royal carriage. You're unusually quiet. Illumi didn't come here to fight us today. I said, leaning against the carriage door while keeping my 45-meter N flared around the perimeter. He was assessing us, and a Zoldyck doesn't assess a defensive team unless someone is offering a massive pile of money behind closed doors to break through it. So he's calling in backup, Cale growled, his eyes narrowing as he adjusted his sidearm. Yeah, I nodded, a faint, razor-sharp smile touching my lips as I looked toward the misty mountain skyline of Delvaux. He's calling Silva and Zoldyck Sr., which means whoever this shadow client is, they just triggered the real climax of this succession war. Chapter 129, The Royal Funeral and False Clues. Date, November 28, 1993. Location, Seacliff Estate, Kingdom of Delvaux. 2 weeks after our encounter in the Capitol Plaza, the giant iron bells of the Royal Basilica chimed 99 times across the island nation. The old king was dead. By Delvaux law, a strict one-year mourning period immediately commenced. No prince could legally ascend the throne until the year had passed. To the average citizen, it was a time of national prayer and quiet grief. To the royal court, it was an invitation to open warfare. Without the king's remaining authority holding the factions back, the gloves came off entirely. The very night the news broke, Prince Donald called Cale and me into his private study. I am doubling your contract payout, Donald said flatly, pulling out a revised Hunter Association ledger. 500 million Jenny each, 1 billion total. But my condition expands. You must protect my sister, Vivienne, alongside Yvain and the children until this bloody succession war is completely over. Done, Cale agreed without hesitation, stamping his thumbprint onto the document. Donald turned to Vivienne, his face pale with concern. Viv, from tonight onward, you stay attached to Yvain and the kids inside the inner sanctuary. No more unannounced market trips, no exceptions. I know, Donald, Vivienne murmured, holding Clara in her arms. For once, she didn't complain about the strictness. She looked at us with quiet trust. I'll keep the children calm. The clumsy traces. Over the next 3 weeks, the assassination attempts spiked in sheer frequency and dropped drastically in subtlety. On December 4th, a team of 6 poisoners tried to contaminate the estate's water reservoir. On December 12th, 4 armed mercenaries attempted to scale the cliffside with military-grade climbing gear. Every single attempt was crushed by my 45-meter on and Cale's heavy rifle fire before they even reached the outer gardens. But when I examined the dead mercenaries' gear, something felt completely wrong. Look at this, I said, flipping over a tactical vest with my boot in the courtyard. A crest from the second prince's private merchant guard, left right inside the pocket. Cale leaned down, picking up a discarded communication drive. And the frequency chatter wasn't even encrypted using military protocols. It leads straight back to Malicor's secondary safe houses. It's too clean, I muttered, narrowing my eyes as the cold sea rain washed the blood down the cobblestones. Malicor is paranoid and obsessive, but he's not an idiot. Someone is deliberately leaving a heavy paper trail pointing directly at the second prince. They want us and Prince Aldous to focus entirely on Malicor. A false flag. Cale growled, tossing the drive into the mud. Which means the real mastermind is letting Malicor take the blame while they prepare the actual strike. Guests on the horizon. Date, December 21st, 1993, 11:30 p.m. Location, the Ocean Cliff Balcony, Prince Donald's estate. The winter storm raged against the cliffs, sending white foam crashing 50 feet into the air. I stood on the high balcony overlooking the sea, my dark coat whipping in the freezing wind. I expanded my on to its absolute limit, feeling the subtle shifts in the atmospheric pressure. Then, through the heavy mist sweeping over the jagged rocks half a mile out, my perception caught 2 distinct aura signatures, standing atop a sea stack. One was massive, surging like a heavy silver dragon, Xeno Zoldyck. The other was dense, quiet, and crushing, Silva Zoldyck. They weren't hiding their presence from me. They were standing in the open fog, letting their aura act as a silent, respectful signal between high-tier professionals. I didn't draw a weapon. I just stood on the balcony, my golden green specialist aura flaring softly around my coat, meeting their distant gazes across the dark ocean. They're here, I thought. Silva, Xeno, and Illumi, the entire main line. Ren, Cale's voice came from behind me as he stepped onto the balcony, cycling the heavy bolt of his sniper rifle. You feel that? Yeah. I replied softly, turning back toward the warm, lighted hallway where Princess Yvain, Vivienne, and the children were sleeping under my pre-laid spatial anchors. A faint, razor-sharp smile touched my lips as I adjusted my coat collar. "Kale, tighten the perimeter to the highest level tonight," I said calmly. "I think we're about to have some honored guests." The true target POV. Silva and Zeno Zoldyck. The ocean gale whipped against the jagged sea stack half a mile off the coast, spraying icy salt water across the dark granite. Silva Zoldyck stood motionless on the narrow rock shelf, his long silver hair flaring in the storm wind. Beside him, his father, Zeno, leaned on his walking stick, his hands tucked neatly into the wide sleeves of his silk martial arts tunic. Behind them both, Illumi crouched silently on a lower ledge like a pale gargoyle, his black hair soaked by the sea spray. "So," Zeno murmured, his sharp eyes narrowing through the ocean mist toward the estate perched high on the cliffside. "That's the boy who stopped your execution contract back in '90, Silva?" "Yes," Silva replied, his voice a low, rumbling baritone. "Ren, he was 18 then. He's 21 now, born in '72. His aura output hasn't just grown, Father. It has stabilized into something far more dangerous." "Oh," Zeno chuckled softly, his long white mustache twitching. "Illumi told me he held a complete Zetsu in the Capitol Plaza while maintaining full spatial awareness. To suppress a reservoir that size down to 0 without a single leak at 21, his control is immaculate." "It's not just control," Illumi's flat, deadpan voice drifted up from the lower ledge. "He laid 3 subtle spatial anchors inside the main sanctuary room 2 weeks ago. He is protecting the wife, the sister, and the 2 children. If we attack that sanctuary, he will fold them into a pocket dimension in under 0.3 seconds. Eliminating those 4 VIPs is nearly impossible without massive casualties." Zeno stroked his chin, his sharp eyes locking onto the tall figure standing on the high estate balcony half a mile away, a young man in a dark coat looking back at them through the storm with absolute, unbothered calm. "Then we don't touch the sanctuary," Zeno said flatly, a cold, businesslike smile appearing under his mustache. "The anonymous proxy client offered us 2.5 billion Jenny to eliminate Prince Donald's bloodline, but the contract specifically listed Prince Donald himself as the primary target." Silva turned his gaze toward the lower study on the east wing, where Prince Donald was sitting alone at his mahogany desk, reviewing shipping manifests under heavy guard. "Ren and Senior Hunter Kale bound their contract specifically to Princess Yvain, Vivienne, and the 2 kids," Silva observed, his massive hands flexing as silver lightning began to ripple faintly around his palms. "Ren's spatial anchors are concentrated entirely around the inner sanctuary wing. He is not guarding the prince's study." "Precisely," Zeno grunted, stepping forward on the wet stone as a massive, translucent dragon of golden nen began to form behind his shoulders. "Silva, you and I will draw the specialist and the sniper to the high balcony. We do not need to defeat Ren. We only need to pin him down and keep his spatial portals focused on the sanctuary for 60 seconds. Illumi's pitch-black eyes flashed in the dark. "Proceed," Silva commanded quietly. POV Ren. On the high balcony, the wind suddenly died down, a sure sign that the air pressure was being crushed by an immense concentration of high-tier Nen. Across the ocean mist, 2 colossal aura signatures exploded off the sea stack. A massive golden dragon of aura, Dragonhead, soared into the sky, while a blinding flare of silver-white transmutation aura illuminated the dark cliffs. "Ren!" Kale shouted over the roaring storm, his anti-material rifle already locked onto the approaching dragon. "They're moving. Both of the senior Zoldicks are coming straight for the balcony." Why? My mind raced at light speed, my golden-green specialist aura surging to full capacity as I stepped in front of the inner sanctuary doors. Silva and Zeno know my spatial anchors are set here. They know breaching this room is suicide. Unless my eyes snapped down toward the lit window of the East Wing study. Prince Donald. "Kale, hold the balcony! It's a feint!" I barked, pivoting on my heel as the air around my right hand began to warp into a spatial tear. Their target isn't the sanctuary, they're executing Donald! Before I could complete the spatial jump to the East Wing, a massive surge of silver lightning crashed onto the balcony roof above us, cracking the stone balustrade into dust. Silva Zoldyck landed in the center of the terrace, his heavy aura pinning the surrounding air down like iron weights, while Zeno's golden dragon looped through the storm clouds above, blocking my direct line of sight to the lower study. "A fine instinct, young man!" Zeno's voice echoed through the thunder as the old master hovered gracefully in the sky above the estate. "But as long as you step away from that sanctuary, your contract targets become vulnerable. Will you stay and protect the family, or run to save the prince?" Down in the east courtyard, invisible to the naked eye, a single pale shadow glided silently past the 4 outer guards, sliding through the cracked window of Prince Donald's study like a ghost. Chapter 129, Midnight in the Great Hall. Date, August 18th, 11:45 p.m. Location, the Central Hall, Prince Donald's estate. That evening, after returning from the Capitol Plaza, I sat down with Prince Donald in his private map room to overhaul our defensive strategy. I laid it out plainly. With my conjuration ability, Sanctuary Waypoint, I could pull him, Yvain, Vivienne, and the kids directly into the resting horizon. Inside that dimensional pocket, no assassin on the planet, Zoldyck or otherwise, could reach them. Donald listened quietly, pouring 2 glasses of dark amber wine before shaking his head with a firm, absolute refusal. "No, Wren," Donald said softly, his voice echoing with the stubborn pride of a former naval commander. "If I vanish into thin air, whoever is pulling these strings will simply burn this island down looking for my bloodline. They'll target the trade unions, the harbor workers, my sister's charity houses. Intrinsic to my duty as a prince, if they want a war, they come to me." He set his glass down, looking me dead in the eye. "I will stand in the main castle hall tonight with 8 of my elite naval bodyguards," Donald declared. "Your contract is hereby focused 100% on my family. Protect Yvain, my kids, and Vivienne. Keep them safe. Let the shadow cast by this succession fall on my chest alone." The 3 options. After leaving Donald's study, Cale and I leaned against the stone balustrade in the high gallery to weigh our choices. Trying to fight off high-tier assassins like the Zoldicks while simultaneously babysitting 5 VIPs in the middle of a battleground was an amateur's gamble. I broke the situation down into 3 distinct tactical paths. Tactical defensive options. Option 1, stash the family inside the resting horizon and fight alongside Cale. Risk. Catastrophic. If I take a fatal hit, the pocket dimension collapses, trapping or erasing the royal family forever. Option 2, Cale takes the family and runs overland while I act as a decoy. Risk high. The Zoldicks could easily split up, sending a speedster like Illumi to hunt Cale down while Silva and Zeno pin me at the estate. Option 3, relocate the family to a remote, undisclosed location far across the continent using Sanctuary Waypoint, guarded by Cale. I stay behind alone to hold the estate and face the assassins. Risk. Lowest for the VIPs. The enemy has 0 trail to follow. If the estate falls, I can instantly disengage using my own portals. Option 3 is out of the question, Cale said instantly, his jaw tightening as he crossed his arms. I'm not leaving a 21-year-old kid alone to face an entire strike team of master killers while I play babysitter. Cale, look at the math, I replied calmly, my tone even and unyielding. If you stay, you're a high-value target that restricts my spatial combat radius. If you're with Yvain, Vivienne, and the kids at the safe house 300 miles away, I don't have to hold back. I don't have to protect a single wall. And if Silva and Zeno press me too hard, I slap a Sanctuary Waypoint on the floor and vanish into the night. Cale stared at me for a long, heavy silence, the storm outside reflecting in his hardened eyes. Finally, he let out a harsh, defeated sigh, reaching out to grip my shoulder. "Don't get cocky, kid," Cale growled softly. "You survived tonight. That's an order." Before midnight struck, I opened a dimensional gateway inside the lower sanctuary. Princess Yvain, 7-year-old Leo, 5-year-old Clara, and Princess Vivienne stepped through into the quiet safety of the resting horizon, exiting out of a hidden secondary waypoint on a secluded coastal estate hundreds of miles south, with Cale standing guard on the other side. The royal family was completely gone. The trail was bone dry. Midnight meeting, 5 a.m. The estate was dead silent, save for the rhythmic patter of heavy rain against the towering stained glass windows of the central hall. Below, Pat in the east wing, Prince Donald stood flanked by his 8 elite naval guards, their steel sabers drawn and ready. I sat alone halfway up the grand marble staircase, bathed in nothing but the pale, cold moonlight filtering through the storm clouds. My dark coat rested loosely around my shoulders. I held no weapons. My zetsu was held down to an absolute 0, making me appear like a harmless shadow resting on the stone steps. Step. Step. Without a sound, the heavy oak doors at the far end of the grand hall didn't burst open. They simply ceased to be locked. 2 tall figures walked casually into the moonlight across the polished marble floor. One was a massive man with long silver hair falling over broad shoulders, moving with the heavy, crushing presence of a mountain, Silva Zoldyck. Beside him walked an elderly man in a white silk tunic, his hands tucked casually into his sleeves, a long mustache framing a faint, half-sharp smile. Zeno Zoldyck. Zeno stopped at the base of the staircase, looking up at me through the dim, moonlit darkness. "Ho!" Zeno chuckled softly, his voice echoing smoothly off the high vaulted ceiling. "How do you do, boy?" I didn't stand up. I stayed seated on the cold marble step, resting my elbow on my knee, looking down at the 2 living legends of Kukuru Mountain with an unbothered, deadpan gaze. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, a faint, razor-sharp smile touching my lips as my golden-green specialist aura began to hum beneath my skin. "I'm afraid we aren't receiving any guests at midnight." Chapter 130, The Long 60 Seconds. Date, August 19th, 1993, a.m. Location, the Central Hall, Prince Donald's Estate. The storm outside lashed the tall stained glass windows, throwing jagged patterns of pale moonlight across the bloodless marble floor. Silva and Zeno stood at the foot of the grand staircase, their posture relaxed, yet their presence crushed the very air in the hall. They weren't leaking a drop of bloodlust. Master assassins never did, but the sheer density of their aura control made the shadows in the room seem to bend toward them. I didn't move from my seat on the cold marble step. I reached into my coat, pulled out a small silver pocket watch, and popped the latch. Tick-tock! Tick-tock! "Before we start this," I said, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, "let me satisfy my curiosity. It's Princess Rosalind, isn't it? The 3rd princess. The quiet sister who claims to be passive and pious." Zeno chuckled, a dry, raspy sound that rustled like dead leaves. He stroked his long, white mustache with 2 fingers. "A sharp mind, boy," Zeno murmured, his sharp eyes glinting in the dark. "People always look at the loudest warlords, the first prince with his armies, or the second prince with his shadow spies. They forget that the quiet ones who hide behind church walls have the deepest coffers. The religious factions paid 3 billion jenny up front through 6 proxy banks." 3 billion. I closed the pocket watch with a sharp snap. A generous price to erase a brother. "Business is business," Silva's heavy baritone rumbled, his massive hands flexing at his sides. "And right now, boy, you are standing on our clock. The clash, second 0 to second 20. I didn't draw a weapon. I didn't reach for the broom. Specialization at the end of the road to hope." Boom! My golden-green specialist aura exploded out of my frame like a silent supernova, filling the entire 3-story hall. All 5 Nen affinities harmonized into absolute, terrifying equilibrium. My physical output doubled instantly, the air warping around my skin as the floorboards beneath my boots turned to white dust. "Now!" Zeno barked. Swoosh! Zeno didn't run. He flew. A colossal, translucent dragon of golden transmutation aura, Dragonhead, erupted behind his shoulders, smashing through the high vaulted ceiling in a shower of falling masonry. The dragon roared down the central stairwell directly at my head, its jaws wide enough to swallow a tank. Simultaneously, Silva vanished. He didn't use Zetsu. He moved at raw, sound-breaking speed, appearing directly to my left with 2 swirling spheres of blinding, silver-white transmutation energy, explosive auric orbs, primed in both palms. A pincer attack from the 2 heads of the Zoldyck family. Enhancement. Aegis of the Faithful. To protect. A dome of ultra-hardened dynamic golden aura flared around my body. The moment Zeno's aura dragon slammed into the dome, the barrier detected the lethal intent and thickened by 3-fold, absorbing the colossal kinetic hammer blow with a deafening thunderclap. Crack! Boom! The marble staircase disintegrated beneath me. As the dust erupted, Silva thrust both orb-laden fists straight into the side of my golden dome. Zzz! The silver lightning from Silva's orbs scraped against my aegis, sending white-hot plasma scorching across the walls. Through the blinding glare, Silva's eyes met mine. He saw me grinning through the golden barrier, my hands already moving. Second 21 to second 45. Transmutation, thread of unbroken will to carry on. 8 ribbon-like tendrils of steel-hardened, elastic golden aura shot out from my coat. 4 of them wrapped around Xeno's descending dragon, violently redirecting the massive aura beast straight into the floorboards, while the other 4 latched onto the heavy stone pillars of the gallery. I retracted the ribbons instantly, slinging my body across the hall at bullet speed, bypassing Silva's guard entirely. "He's too fast," Xeno warned, diving through the falling debris, his palms thrusting forward to execute a rapid-fire volley of Dragonlance aura strikes. I spun midair, conjuring my weapon directly into my right grip with a burst of blinding golden light. Sub-ability, the Broom of the Wrath Angel. I flooded the heavy metallic fiber broom with the full, unbridled power of my dual postmortem engine via heavy shoe. Downward crush, dust strike. I brought the heavy broom down in a 2-handed overhead slam straight onto Xeno's incoming Dragonlance. Boom. The ground-shattering impact crushed Xeno's high-level Ken defense, detonating the stone floor into a crater 10 feet deep. Xeno was blasted backward, his feet tearing 2 deep trenches through the marble as he caught his balance, his arms smoking from the raw enhancement kinetic shockwave. Silva was already behind me, his massive hands transformed into razor-sharp dragon claws, aiming a lethal strike straight for my spine. I didn't turn around. Manipulation. Soul Vanguard. To devote! Thump! My 2 fully autonomous aura armor constructs materialized instantly. The defensive Vanguard raised its massive aura shield, intercepting Silva's claw strike with a shower of sparks, while the aggressive Vanguard launched a brutal, 2-handed sword thrust that forced Silva to leap backward into the shadows. Second 46 to second 60. The entire central hall was a ruined wasteland of broken stone, shattered pillars, and swirling dust. I stood in the center of the crater, my dark coat whipping in the storm wind, blowing through the shattered roof. My physical wounds were healing in real time under the continuous replenishment at the end of the road. Xeno wiped a thin line of blood from his white mustache. Silva stood beside him, his silver hair floating around his head as his heavy aura surged to its absolute peak. 60 seconds of relentless high-tier Nen combat. A battle that felt like an eternity, yet the second hand on my pocket watch had barely completed a single revolution. Xeno raised his hand, signaling a temporary pause. He looked at me with a mixture of sharp professional respect and deep, quiet calculation. 60 seconds, Xeno muttered, his voice calm despite the destroyed hall. In 60 seconds, you've held off 2 head family members, deployed 3 distinct Hatsu disciplines, and haven't lost a single breath. I told you, I said, lowering the heavy metallic broom to my side, my golden green aura pulsing like a steady heartbeat. We aren't receiving guests tonight. Suddenly, a quiet electronic ringtone broke the heavy silence of the ruined hall. Silva reached into his dark vest, pulling out a small, encrypted satellite phone. He flipped it open and pressed it to his ear, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Dad." Illumi's flat, emotionless voice bled clearly through the speaker, echoing in the quiet night air. "The target has been eliminated. Prince Donald is dead." Chapter 130, Summary and Status. The contractor. Xeno confirms the third princess, Rosalind, hired the Zoldycks for 3 billion Jenny using religious faction proxy funds. The 60-second clash. Ren goes all out using At the End of the Road, matching Xeno and Silva simultaneously in a brutal, fast-paced arena battle. The tragic twist. While Ren held Silva and Xeno in the Grand Hall, Illumi breached Prince Donald's lower wing and executed the prince. Current situation. Prince Donald is dead. The royal family remains hidden and safe with Kale far away, but the succession war has taken its biggest casualty. Chapter 131. The Aftermath of a Shadow War. Date, August 19th, 1993. Location, the ruined Grand Hall, Prince Donald's estate. The cold rain poured through the shattered ceiling, washing away the thick dust and pulverized marble hanging in the air. Silva slowly closed the satellite phone and slipped it back into his vest. Beside him, Xeno exhaled a long trail of mist into the freezing night, resting both hands on his walking stick as his golden aura dragon dissolved into the darkness. I stood in the center of the crater, my dark coat soaked through, holding the broom of the Wrath Angel loosely at my side. My golden green aura settled back down to a quiet, rhythmic hum. "So you two were just a diversion, huh?" I asked, looking at them through the falling rain. "A grand diversion?" And just like that, you leave? Silva met my gaze, his expression completely flat. Our contract was to eliminate Prince Donald Dedval, Silva replied, his voice a heavy, calm baritone. The client did not pay for your life, nor did they pay us to die trying to take it. The primary target is dead. Our mission is complete. An assassin who fights for pride or spite is an assassin who doesn't live to see old age, Zeno added with a raspy, knowing chuckle. You kept us occupied for 60 seconds, boy. That was more than enough time for Illumi to walk through the east wing. They turned toward the shattered entrance, preparing to vanish into the ocean storm. Hey, I called out, my voice stopping them at the threshold. Before you go. They both paused, turning their heads slightly. If this was a fight to the death, I asked, looking up at the storm clouds with a deadpan, genuine curiosity, who do you think would have won? Silence settled over the ruined hall for 3 long seconds, save for the thunder rumbling off the coast. Zeno turned his head fully, his sharp, ancient eyes locking onto mine with profound professional assessment. If you stayed on the defensive to protect a location, we would have worn you down eventually, Zeno said plainly. But in an open, unconstrained field, where you don't have to protect anyone, and you start throwing those spatial portals without restraint, Zeno paused, a thin, razor-sharp smile appearing beneath his white mustache. One of us wouldn't be walking back to Kukuru Mountain. Zeno admitted softly, and the one who did walk back would be crippled for life. You are an absolute monster for 21, Hunter Wren. Silva reached into his coat, pulled out a sleek obsidian black calling card with a silver Zoldyck crest embossed on the front, and flicked it toward me. Ftoot whip. I caught the card effortlessly between 2 fingers. If you ever find yourself needing a target removed, Silva said as his silver aura flared to cushion his leap into the night air, call that frequency. Mention this night, and you will receive a 50% discount. Keep your head on a swivel, boy, Zeno added, leaping up onto the ruined roofline. For this the princess who hired us won't stop until the bloodline is wiped clean. In the blink of an eye, the 2 legends vanished into the rain-drenched darkness. What a drag. I stood alone in the quiet, ruined hall for a long time. The metallic broom dissolved into golden particles, returning to my aura pool. My body felt heavy, even with the continuous replenishment of nubs. At the end of the road to Hope and the dual post-mortem engines surging beneath my ribs, maintaining high-density spatial control while matching 2 legendary assassination masters simultaneously, had drained every nerve in my system. I walked over to the ruined marble staircase, cleared away a few chunks of rubble, and simply laid my body flat on the cold stone steps, staring up at the rain falling through the ceiling. What a drag! I muttered out loud, letting out a long, heavy sigh into the empty hall. It's so damn annoying to face those 2. I rubbed my temples with my wet sleeve, feeling the dull ache behind my eyes. What a shitty job you took, Kale, I grumbled to the empty room. Seriously. 1 billion Jenny isn't nearly enough for this headache. Even with the Sacred Wayfarer, my spatial anchors, Aegis of the Faithful, and the secret dual post-mortem soul powering my engine from the shadows, fighting Zeno and Silva Zoldyck at the same time was like trying to hold back 2 oncoming mountain slides with your bare hands. 1 wrong calculation, 1 millisecond off on a spatial fold, and a dragon claw or an aura orb would have ripped right through my vitals. Psst. My pocket transceiver buzzed in my coat. I pulled it out and clicked the line open. Wren! Kale's tense voice came through the speaker, accompanied by the quiet sound of wind at the safe house hundreds of miles away. I felt the aura shockwaves all the way from the secondary relay. What happened? Did you hold them off? Is Donald? The family is safe, I interrupted softly, staring up at the dark sky. Yvain, Vivienne, and the kids are completely fine, but Donald is gone. Illumi got him. A long, heavy silence fell over the line. I could hear Kale's slow, ragged exhale on the other end. The Zoldicks pulled back, I continued, closing my eyes on the cold stone step. The 3rd princess, Rosalind, was the contractor. Get ready, Kale. Prince Donald is dead, which means Princess Vivienne and Yvain are about to become the most hunted people in this kingdom.